Go ahead, Terry. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for a short prayer and a salute to our flag? Almighty God, grant us the wisdom to make those decisions that are in the best interest of all our residents. May the Heavenly Father of us all bless those who have given the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation, and may He watch over and protect our servicemen and women now guarding the gates of freedom. Salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terry, notice of publication?
Yes, Mayor, take notice that this regular meeting of the Mayor and Borough Council being held on this 12th day of June 2017 has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Buchanan. Here. Grillo.
Here.
Kilpatrick. Here. Lembo. Here. Melendez.
Here.
Novak.
Here.
Okay, at this time, over the weekend, we lost a very dear friend. George, I know I didn't speak with you, but would you come up and say a few words on behalf of Matt, please, and his family? There is a GoFundMe page, but we lost a very dear friend, colleague, fireman, borough employee, but one fine human being. He was far too young, and God called him home, and must have needed him before we thought of his time. George, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor. George Gavin, Fire Chief for the Seville Fire Department. Matt Winston will be very deeply missed in the Fire Department and at Public Works. He was a man that if you were down, he knew how to bring you up. He was that type of person that he was fun to be around, knew how to do his job, and he will just be deeply missed in the Fire Department. And it's just a sad thing for his family that a man is gone at such a young age.
Thank you, George. Matt leaves 2 young children and a wife. I saw on Facebook today there is a GoFundMe page to accept donations to help in the transition for his family. Would you all join me in a moment of silence and remembrance for Matt Winston, please? Thank you, everyone. Council President?
Yes, Mayor, I move that the following minutes be approved, subject to correction. The April 11, 2017 regular meeting, agenda session, and executive session. April 13th, receipt of bids. April 24th, special meeting and executive session. April 24th, regular meeting, executive session, and agenda session. April 25th, receipt of bids, and the May 8th, regular meeting, agenda session, and executive session.
Second.
Terry, well, at this time, we're going to ask the, you need a roll call on that? Roll call, please.
Councilpersons Buchanan.
Yes.
Grillo.
Yes.
Kilpatrick.
Yes.
Lembo.
Yes.
Melendez.
Yes.
Novak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask the Home Serve Partnership come up to give their presentation, please. If you would take the microphone and state your name and your company, please.
Good evening. My name is Monica Valera. I'm the Director of Account Management for HomeServe USA. I'd like to start off by thanking you for allowing us your time tonight and also for your partnership. I know everybody's got a copy of the deck, but I think I want to just really focus on page 6. We started our partnership with the Borough of Sayreville back in August of 2014. Since then, we have successfully been in relationships or partnership with over 3,000 customers who have just over 5,200 policies. We have a 38% customer participation rate based on those customers who are able to enroll, which is very, very high, and we're very excited about that. Since starting the relationship, we've saved customers over $165,000 in emergency home repairs, and we've maintained 100% customer satisfaction. At HomeServe, one of the things that is most important to us and the crux of our business is really customer service. Our whole business model is around what we do for the customer and ensuring that we always do right by them. This is embedded through our organization with our customer promise. So we ensure that if there's an issue, we're remediating it ASAP and that we're always doing right by the customer. As we're approaching our 3-year mark, we are here to ask if we can continue this partnership for another 3-year term to allow us the opportunity to continue servicing your customers and offering the great services and products we have to offer.
Okay, Bonnie, let me interrupt here a minute, just so I can explain. Monica, I'm sorry. What it is your company does.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Several years ago, we had a resident who just lives down the street. Every single family home in Sayreville has what's known as a lateral, and it goes from their house to the center of the street. And it's for fresh water and it's for sewage water. After 20, 25 years, if you have a tree on the front lawn or just from age and use, the lateral has to be replaced. When Mr. Gianvenco came in here, I think he spent like $13,000 to replace it, and he had always assumed it was a borough responsibility, which it is not. It is the homeowner's responsibility. What does one of your policies cost covering the laterals?
$539 for the water service line.
$539.
Per month.
What's the annual? $5.39
39 cents.
a month. We did investigate this 3 years ago, and a number of people went to their own insurance agent, State Farm, Allstate, et cetera, and the agent said, I want to get in on that. I want to buy it for my home. So it's been a very successful program. Unfortunately, it was after me and Mr. Gianvenco could have used it, but there were, you did 300 homeowners? Okay, okay. Does anyone on the Borough Council have a question?
I think it's great.
Do we need to go to the public?
Well worth the money.
Well, before we do that, is there anyone, I'm going to open it up to the public in the event anyone from the public has a question or wants to make a comment on this insurance. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square in Parlin. Mayor, members of the council, I had been the president of my townhouse association for 35 years up until January of this year. And a few years ago, in fact, prior to the borough getting involved, I think the borough got involved in 2014. Prior to doing that, because we had a lot of laterals that were made out of plastic or PVC that were breaking, I found this and encouraged our residents to take advantage of both of their programs. And many have, and things were fine. Up until recently, I can tell you that within the last 8 months, we have had 3 residents, and I could tell you their names and their addresses, if you would like, who have had to wait more than 2 weeks to get their repairs done. One of these residents is an, I hope he's not watching, is an elderly gentleman who lives on Ardsley Square. He had to turn, his water was turned off because it was in the winter. Water was running out and freezing on the square. He had to move out of his house because he could neither cook nor bathe in his house. And he became ill. I'm not saying there's cause and effect, but he became ill over that period of time and was staying in a motel for a week. He called a number of people. I eventually called the company on his behalf, but it took 2 weeks. And the plumber who came, two different people came. One came to diagnose the problem. That was somebody from North Jersey. And then a little bit more than a week later, somebody from South Jersey came to fix the problem. There have been 2 other similar situations, one as recently as last month on Ivy Hill. There was one on Girard. I don't recall when that was, but that went on for an extended period of time. And while this service is wonderful, I recommended it long before the borough did to our residents. By and large, most of the residents have been happy, and it has saved them money. But in the recent past, service has not been what it should be. At one point in time, I called somebody and I was told that they were waiting for the borough to give them a permit for them to do the repair. Well, I know that's not accurate. I know that the borough would never stand in the way. First of all, I don't think a permit is required because I don't know that anybody else ever got one. Second of all, I know this borough and this governing body and this administration, and they would never hold up something for lack of a permit. And I think the person was just being less than candid in that instance. So while I support this, I think it should be fine-tuned and there should be some guarantees so that this kind of thing doesn't happen again. And I would appreciate it if you would address that as well as members of the council. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that.
Ken? Art, rather?
Want her to address that now, or can she answer the question?
No, let's get all, you can address it at once.
Hi, Art Rittenhouse, 33 Delacat Lane, Saraville. When I was on the council, I was the one who negotiated the contract for HomeServe. And I just want to make sure that that contract's going to stay the same as it is, where it goes from the water meter out to the coupling on the thing. As far as response time and response from residents, I've probably talked to at least 100 people, and everybody's been overly satisfied with this response time, getting it. They're very pleased, and they've gone on and bought the sewer, and they've also gone on, there's another one that you have. The only question I've had from residents is they get confused when the letter comes out that says Borough of Saraville Water Department on it. That's something I think you have to maybe work with the council on getting that. But other than that, I have the service on the water, and it's an excellent product, and the money comes back to the people, to the residents that are buying it also, which was an important factor on that. But thank you for that.
Are there any other questions or comments? Young lady, if you want to answer.
So I want to start off by thank you for your candid feedback, and by all means, it's not what we like to hear, and I would certainly like to get that information from you to personally see that we see what happened, but also to ensure that that does not happen again, because that's not to our standard. So I do apologize. I wish I knew more, but the best I can do is take that back to our team and ensure we do right for those 3 residents that were affected by this. And you have my word on that. Absolutely.
Mayor, if I may?
Yeah.
For anybody that's watching, okay, and for people here in the audience, I have been the point person with HomeServe, especially with Monica. So I would appreciate when anything does come up, not that I know where she is all the time, not that I know where Jennifer is all the time, but what I need to know is to please contact me. Every resident that's contacted me, they have responded within 24 to 48 hours. So I'm really surprised when I hear something like that. Not that I'm saying it didn't happen, but I would appreciate if you hear of something is please call my office so I can get involved, so I can help service the residents. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Anything from the governing body? Nothing from the governing body. Monica, what I would ask is we can put it on for the next meeting, but what I would ask is you put a little written report that you get from Mr. Robinson, and then go over the nomenclature with Mr. Frankel on how we're going to send it out to the residents so that it's less confusing. But we thank you for your service to our community, and we're very appreciative.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next item, Terry.
Yes, Mayor, we have the following ordinances for public hearing. Ordinance number 367-17, ordinance appropriating $190,000 for the acquisition of various vehicles and equipment in, by, and for the Borough of Saraville, County of Middlesex, New Jersey.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open the public portion for questions or comments on this ordinance. Are there any questions or comments? Being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Council President.
Mayor, I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Is there a second? Second. Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan,
Yes?
Grillo,
Yes.
Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Lembo, Melendez,
Yes.
Novak.
Yes.
Public hearing on ordinance number 368-17, bond ordinance providing for the acquisition of vehicles and equipment in, by, and for the Borough of Saraville.
Terry, hey, Jimmy and Doc, if you would just bring the conversation to the hall, please, because it's traveling up here. Go ahead.
Bond ordinance providing for the acquisition of vehicles and equipment in, by, and for the Borough of Sayreville, New Jersey, appropriating $2 million therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,900,000 bonds and notes of the borough for financing part of such appropriation.
At this time, we're going to open the public portion for questions or comments on this ordinance. Are there any questions or comments? Being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Councilwoman Novak.
Yes, I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Roll call. Mary, is your speaker on?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Go ahead.
Councilpersons Novak?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick? Lembo? Melendez?
Yes.
Public hearing on ordinance number 369-17, bond ordinance providing for the improvements to various parks in the Borough of Sayreville, New Jersey, appropriating $330,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $313 bonds and notes of the borough for financing part of such appropriation.
At this time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments on this ordinance. Are there any questions or comments? There being none, I'll entertain a motion. Councilwoman Novak.
I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Novak?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick? Yes. Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Public hearing on ordinance number 370-17, bond ordinance providing for various improvements in, by, and for the Borough of Sayreville, New Jersey, appropriating $2,250,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $2,142,000 bonds and notes of the borough for financing part of such appropriation.
At this time, we're going to open the public portion for questions or comments on this ordinance. Are there any questions or comments? Being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Novak?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick? Yes. Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Public hearing on ordinance number 371-17, an ordinance appropriating $49,350 for the acquisition of various equipment for the Borough of Sayreville Papa Warner football program in, by, and for the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, New Jersey.
This time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments on this ordinance. Are there any questions or comments? Being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Councilwoman Novak.
I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second, roll call.
Councilpersons Novak?
Yes.
Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick? Yes. Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
This time, I'm going to open up the public portion on consent agenda items only. Are there any questions or comments on consent agenda? There being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the public portion be closed and the consent agenda resolutions be approved on roll call vote.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick? Yes. Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Mayor, we have the following resolution to be read in full. That will be read by Borough Attorney Mike Dupont.
Yes, Mayor, the resolution 2017-181, a resolution of the Borough of Sayreville and the County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, appointing Susan Gruhl, a planner of the firm Hare, Gruhl and Associates as review planner for the Borough of Sayreville's COA obligations, whereas the governing body of the Borough of Sayreville recognizes the need for certified planner to advise the governing body of its obligations concerning GOA, whereas the governing body of the Borough of Sayreville received recommendations for qualified planners, whereas the borough officials had opportunity to meet Susan Gruhl of the firm, and are confident Susan Gruhl will successfully counsel the governing body of the Borough of Sayreville with regards to its co-obligations. Therefore, be it resolved that the governing body of the Borough of Sayreville awards a contract to Susan Gruhl of the firm of Hire Gruhl Associates to act as review planner with regards to the Borough of Sayreville's co-obligations at a fee not to exceed $10,000.
I move the resolution be approved.
We need to open up to the public, please.
Are there any, I open this to the public portion for any questions or comments. Jim?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square. I'm very happy to hear this resolution is on. This was discussed 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, it did not receive unanimous support. That's why I'm speaking now. In fact, Mayor, a couple weeks ago when this was first brought up, to bring in another planner to explore and advise the council and perhaps come up with some better options than building a couple or a few thousand homes that the planning board has recommended. I was in support of it then. I'm very happy to hear that Susan Gruhl is the planner. She's an excellent planner. They were the borough planner at one time. We didn't have nearly as much litigation back then. I think she will do an excellent job. But I just want to get something clear for the record, and maybe this will help convince the two gentlemen who voted against this last time. Mayor, last time that this was brought up by the council, you said that this was a first, and you asked Councilman Grillo if he had ever heard of anything like this happening before, the council hiring its own planner. Well, the borough has, for years, had its own planner, and in the most recent decision on the Fulton Landing, I don't know, Mayor, did you have an opportunity to read that decision?
Proceed, Jim.
67 pages. I won't say it's exciting, but this decision, a couple weeks ago I said it cost us $1.2 million to lose the case. Since then, some more bills came in. The town has spent $1.3 million on this case, which we lost. And I understand also that Mr. Mako has come in with an application for 206 or 207 homes. And you may recall I came up a few times to suggest that we settle this before we lost it, and unfortunately that didn't happen. But when I wanted to correct the record because I didn't want to argue at the time, even though, Mayor, you had an opinion and Mr. Grillo, you had the same opinion, I had a different opinion. I still thought it would have been an unfair fight. But when I read this decision, it became clear, and I hope you did read it. It was very expensive. If you haven't, I'll share my copy with you, Mayor. The borough retained its own planner on this litigation. Peter Steck, who's an excellent planner. I happen to know Peter. He was not approved by the planning board, not approved by the governing body, never appeared before the planning board or the council, never talked to any member of the planning board, but yet billed, and I don't know if he billed more than $10,000 or not. And the planning board adopted the amendments to the master plan that were later found to be null and void, but they adopted his amendments and they adopted his ordinance and sent it to the council, or they recommended his ordinance to the mayor and council, which ultimately adopted. I don't think anybody here has ever seen or talked to Peter Steck. Have you, Mayor? Do you know Mr. Steck?
I do not.
Okay. However, he represented the borough on this. So to say that this was a first is not accurate. And what the council is doing now is actually doing it the right way. You've chosen a planner that you vetted apparently. Well, you know Susan. She worked in the town.
We have not vetted her, Jim.
Yeah, that actually
That's
brings
where
up a
you're
good point.
mistaken.
Borough's
Thank
planner.
you for opening that up. Who did
Borough's
vet?
planner
Mr. Robinson.
and-
Mr. Robinson?
Who did vet Susan
And-
Gruhl? How was this process done, Jim? Because this is the first I'm seeing of this reso. So it's been 3 weeks since the last meeting.
Well, whatever it was,
And
2 weeks or 3 weeks.
I know you're close with Susan Gruhl, so I assume this was under your direction.
I have not
But-
spoken to Susan
But
Gruhl.
this is the first I'm hearing of this.
Mayor, a couple months ago, you accused me of representing Mr. Mako, which was a lie. Now you're saying that
I'll
I'm
stand
close
by
to
it,
Susan
Jim.
Gruhl. I haven't spoken to Susan Gruhl since she represented the Borough Planning Board, and I was on the Planning Board 20 years ago. So you are mistaken, Mayor. However,
I
would
don't
highly
think so.
recommend her as I would recommend a number
yep.
of other planners who are excellent in this field. And I will tell you, given the town's record, we are sorely in need of good professional land use planning and legal advice. I mean, this case here, $1.3 million we lost. I suggested a while ago that we settle. Anybody who knew the facts on this would have known that we were going to lose it. So all I want to do is correct the record on that. This is not the first time. Maybe it's the first time the borough knew that they were spending money to retain a planner that they never talked to or never met. But I want to compliment the council for doing two things. Number one, picking Susan Gruhl, and number two, doing it the appropriate way at a council meeting by vote. And I would sincerely hope that given where we are in this process and given what the alternative is, Councilman Lembo and Councilman Grillo, of building thousands of additional homes, I really think we need some additional planning advice to come up with a better idea to address our affordable housing obligation, and I would very strongly urge you to support this resolution.
Anything else?
That's it for now, Mayor.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Mayor, I have a comment. Since Mr. Robinson opened up, how did we arrive at Susan Gruhl? And I have worked professionally with Susan. I think she is a preeminent planner. She is terrific. But who made the selection of Susan Gruhl? How many resumes did we see? I hear ad nauseum that this is the most important issue facing the borough, yet I get a resolution on Friday afternoon that tells me we're hiring Susan Gruhl. Who else? Well, how
Did this process happen? Dan?
I was given a few names by John Leon Cavella at the direction of what was voted on at the last council meeting. I went down the list that he gave me. The first person that I contacted, and I can't remember the person's name, it was a gentleman, had a conflict of time. The second person was Susan Gruhl. I set up an appointment with Mike Dupont and myself to vet her, and that's where this recommendation comes from.
So we only looked at 2 resumes?
Because of the time and
Well,
because of what we needed and because of people's conflicts, when the second one came through on John's recommendation, the second one had the time, and she was a professional, and she had worked here before, and we felt her credentials were impeccable.
And that was my main objection at the last meeting, was that I felt that this was a bit rushed based on our court date. I believe we're due back in court July 5th, is that correct?
July 6th.
July 6th. She has a couple of weeks to review a plan that took over a year and a half to develop. We only were able to interview 2 people. I think this is something that should have come up if there was concern on the council back in January, February, when we started this debate. I'm disappointed that there wasn't as much transparency as there probably should have been in something this important. So, and like I said, I've got nothing but respect for Susan Gruhl. She's a terrific planner. I imagine that her appointment will go through tonight, but I'm sure we'll get a good product. But I think that this was just not done probably as properly as it should have been.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Oh, I have a comment. Last year, when this was predominantly being discussed and finalized, you should have been giving us reports on this, Steve. So the part that was kept hidden, you should have been telling us what the heck was going on.
You voted on this.
I did not vote. We went over the minutes.
You voted in June. It was a 6-0 unanimous vote to advance
Excuse
this
me.
plan. No, it's the truth.
There was nothing in there ever discussed about rezoning.
So what did
Only
you
the
vote on?
number of
Something you didn't
houses.
understand or something you didn't read?
Something, I relied on our representative from the planning board and our attorneys and our planner to tell us the truth. I brought out the minutes of all of the closed session meetings.
And I have the minutes of
with
the vote we
everything.
took.
Everything. And I brought it to the meeting. There was never anything discussed about this until I got this in February in my package to put all of these new zoning things into effect. That's the first time I heard about it. And I'm the one who brought it up here that we didn't know anything about it. Now, you're shaking your head because you knew about it. I agree, you knew all about it.
Of course.
But your job as the representative of the council on the planning board was to bring all of this stuff back to us, and you didn't.
I absolutely did. I think this is
Never.
This plan is sound.
We have the minutes of the
Then
meeting,
you voted on
Steve.
something you didn't know about, Mary.
You-
Listen, we've been doing this dance for 4 months. You know where I'm disappointed? We've been having the same conversation since February, and nobody has done anything to propose anything new. Certainly not you, and certainly not the 4 Democrats who are sitting up here.
That's not true.
What have you
There was-
done?
There
What's
was several
been amended in the plan?
recommendations. There was several recommendations made, and the last thing we said was we needed a new planner in here because the planner that we had, I don't believe was representing the town very fairly.
Well, you shouldn't have appointed him on January 1st. He wasn't incompetent then. He's incompetent now, though. And you made Larry Sachs special counsel for COA. Now he's incompetent, too? Bad judge of character.
I don't know if he's incompetent. I believe he was intentionally told not to tell us what was going on because it was some secret deal with developers.
Well, I certainly wasn't involved in any secret deals, and I doubt the professionals were, but I guess we have to vet them a little bit better next time.
Who are you accusing of being involved in a secret deal? If there is a secret deal, then it has to go to the prosecutor.
Mayor,
I
this probably
agree.
should have gone a long time
Well,
ago.
I think
With the
you should
plans-
send
With
it.
the plans that we've had, and what's going on in the planning board about ignoring state laws. And you know what? Yes, we were in that closed session meeting.
No, let's go
We were in
back to
that
this
closed session
statement.
meeting.
Let's go back to this statement, Dan, by Mary, that there's a secret deal going on, which would be illegal. So I think it's incumbent upon Mary to file with the prosecutor that there's a secret deal, a secret land deal in Sayreville. So go ahead, Mary. I think you need to do that.
Sounds like an idea, Kennedy.
If it becomes apparent to you and that's what you feel,
All
then you
I
need
know is
to
when
bring
the
it to the
lawyer,
prosecutor.
the lawyer tried to explain further to us, your exact words were, on 2 occasions, we don't need, or they don't need to know how the sausage is made. And you stopped them.
Did you say, I have questions? The worst thing is when you go in a private session and you have people similar to deers looking in headlights. So just to speed it up, I'd say, do we really need the sausage recipe, or are we just going to make the sausage? Did you say anything? Did you say anything?
Nope.
Okay. Well, Mary, you can't come back after this is all done.
Yeah, I certainly can, Kennedy, because you're asking me now to vote on these zoning changes, and I have no intentions of doing it.
I didn't think you did,
You can't tell
Mary.
us that we have to vote for it, but then say we don't have any right to have any say in the actual deal.
Well, I think you're demonstrating that you do tonight, Mary, and Dan.
Right, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
I will not be breaking a tie vote, just to let everyone know here. This will be pushed back to you. Yes, Ken?
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Olszewski, 108 North Edward Street, Sayreville. I, too, share what Mr. Robinson said about a delight in hiring a planner tonight. I know Susan Gruhl worked for the borough. I'm not pitching for Susan Gruhl. I'm not pitching for any planner. What I am pitching for, and by the way, I'm getting a little tired of coming to these meetings and hear people coming to the microphone and being accused of pitching for somebody. And if there is, you're telling Mary about going to the prosecutor. If you're pitching, Mr. Robinson is, or stating Mr. Robinson is pitching for a planner or pitching for Mako or whatever it is, I think it's incumbent upon you to state the facts and how you know that, because I consider that an insult to people coming to this microphone, trying to do the right thing for the borough of Sayreville. Because Lord only knows, it doesn't appear that we've been on the track of doing the right thing in this COA thing. It looks like the right thing was to have the builders do a lot of building in this town. We've rehashed some of this about the planning board for years and years and years now, and not putting an affordable housing component in any of these approvals. And we never got an answer why. Mayor, you are the planning board in this town. For the people who don't understand, the planning board under our form of government is appointed by the mayor with no consent from anybody here. He can appoint anybody he wants. So you are the planning board, Mayor. You have a seat on the planning board. I've come here, I've heard other people come here, and you're saying, maybe you should go to the planning board. I mean, are you really serious about that? And nobody has given an answer. I came here a couple of times already and asked, why isn't there an affordable component in the Kaplan projects across the street from my house? They weren't done 15 years ago. They weren't done 20. They just did some of the final approvals. He was in court against the borough a few years ago. Why is there no component affordable housing? Is there an answer to that? Anybody have an answer to why? I know there isn't. Jay was kind enough to say there isn't. Does anybody have an answer why there isn't? Why? Mayor, you probably should know. Again, it's your planning board. Why was there no affordable component for Kaplan?
Ken, I'm going to recommend to you what I've always recommended to you. The planning board has worked for years on this. They have all the detail, right down to all the minutia, and they are the appropriate body to go. You don't want to go to them, you want to come here, you get a better audience here. I don't really know why you do this, but it's a very simple thing to go to a planning board meeting. I've talked to the planning board members. They welcome all members of the public. This is what they do. They deal with the planning of the borough of Sayreville. They study it, they debate it, they talk about it, and it is there. We have some very, very fine members of the planning board. All of them are dedicated to the borough of Sayreville, and I highly recommend that you go there, because for every question, there's usually another question, and that is the proper place for you to go to get all your questions, those that you know right now and those that will come to you as you ask questions and your questions are answered. That is the appropriate place. The fact that you don't like it, the fact that you want to have a TV audience or a bigger audience here, the fact that you want to try to embarrass me. As a matter of fact, Ken, you were the Republican chairman when Mike Diadio, who was a Republican at the time and is now the vice chairman of the Democratic Party, said, we'd like to change the planner from Susan Gruhl to John Leon Cavella, and you agreed to it. So now, umpteen years later, you're opposed to it, and we need to have new and fresh eyes. It's just, Ken, it's an opportunity for you to take to attack me. That's fine. Go ahead. You've been trying it for years. Exhaust yourself.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for that speech. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I didn't, Ken,
recommended
you are getting
a
older.
I recommended a planner. Are you serious, Mayor? You represent the planning board.
I appoint.
You were elected by the people of
And
Sayreville, Mayor.
this is
You were
exactly what
elected,
happened.
And you're trying to pass it off to another board?
No, I'm
Let me
just
ask
saying you were included in this, Ken. You were
That's
part of this
absolutely
discussion.
untrue,
No,
Mayor.
it's very true,
You're making up another
Ken.
story.
Very
You're
true.
making up another story. Let me ask you, at the planning board, do we go to the illegal planning board or the legal planning board, Mayor? You didn't
go to
even
the
appoint
Sayreville
members to
planning
the,
board,
to the
Ken.
planning board last year.
Ken.
And you never gave us an answer.
Get it all out.
You never gave
Get
us an
it all
answer,
out.
Mayor.
Get it all out.
You're sitting there and you act like you're here from New Brunswick, like you're an outsider. Why didn't you
Get it
appoint
all out,
legal
Ken.
people to the planning board, Mayor?
Get it out of your system.
I'm asking for your
Go
answer.
to the
I'll
planning
wait
board,
for it.
Ken.
No, they
Next-
didn't appoint. They don't appoint themselves.
Next question.
You have legal,
Next question,
illegal
Ken.
people on last year's planning
Next
board.
question, Ken.
And you didn't forget about it, Mayor, because Councilman Buchanan right here said he reminded you. So they sat
And
there
what
all
is-
year
what is your
illegally.
next question?
And you're talking, no, I'm talking about the planning board,
Ken,
Mayor.
you go
And
ahead.
their irresponsibility in not appointing members last year. And you're trying to pass the buck to somebody else, to the planning board. It's not the planning board, it's you, Mayor.
No, Ken, I think it's really you, but
And
go
that's-
ahead.
And that's the issue. Let me tell
Do
you.
you have any other
Yeah,
questions
let
of
me
relevance?
tell you something. I have a statement, Mayor.
Please, I thought you would.
Yeah, I do, because when we talk about people that somebody might be pitching for, do you remember Mr. Kay? I think a lot of people remember Bob Kay, and your illegal meeting with him over at the Woodbridge Hilton. No, excuse me, your meeting with him at the Woodbridge Hilton, and then we had missing tapes from the planning board meetings, and it went to the prosecutor. Talking about going to the prosecutor. So Bob Kay apparently is a friend of yours, and he'd be a big recipient if we ignore all this stuff and just do a bunch of building. So if anybody might be pitching somebody, it could be you, Mayor. And let me close by saying this. Will Rogers once said, we can't all be heroes. Somebody's got to sit at the curb and clap as they all walk by. And you're talking about me, want a TV audience. The only thing I want is for the taxpayers of Sayreville not to get the shaft and have you sit there, Mayor, and have you sit there advocating your friends. And when Will Rogers said that, we can't all be heroes, somebody's got to sit at the curb and clap as they all walk by. No, I don't want to be a hero, Mayor. I want to sit at the curb. But I'll be damned if I want to be sitting next to Kaplan and Bob Kay and have them screaming out, "Hey, thanks, Mayor, for making more millions of dollars for us."
Oh,
That's
Ken,
what I have
well,
to say, Mayor.
well
Thank you.
imagined. You're getting a bit older now, so that you get a little befuddled.
Older and a little smarter. So are you, by the way, Mayor.
Yeah,
Maybe it's come
like
to be your
you.
time. Maybe you're not interested anymore. Okay? Thank you.
We'll see you, Ken. Barb, come on up. Nah, it's fine. It's fine. The older guys need to talk the most.
Barbara Kilcummins, 22 Schmidt Street. First of all, I think we need a fresh set of eyes other than Susan Gruhl. And I'll tell you why. And it's nothing against Susan, but I think the planning in this community stinks. It really is. When I was a child growing up, and that was many, many years ago, 70 years ago, Main Street, we didn't have to leave town. We had every facility imaginable. We had a theater where Domino's was the A&P. We had a hardware store. We had a department store. We had luncheonettes. We had doctors. We had dentists, all on Main Street. You didn't even need a car for the people that lived in Sayreville proper. What do we have now? And what do we have? We're 43,000 people. We're 16 square miles. You can't get a blood test or an x-ray. You have to go to neighboring towns. South Amboy, 1 square mile. They had the old hospital. They converted it. I go for my blood tests there. You could go to for tests. You either have to go to Old Bridge, East Brunswick, for any type of medical. We have a beautiful building on Pulaski Avenue. It sits empty. They said, well, they didn't want medical facility there or something else. And I don't mean, I know there's two past planning board chairmen here, and I don't mean to insult them and all, but this has been going on and on. All Sayreville knows is housing, housing, housing. Now we have COA, which was affordable housing. Where is their senior housing? Where is their veterans housing? Nothing. Look at Monroe. They converted farms into numerous housing. Spotswood, a small community. With Sandy, I know of 9 families that were looking for a home. Spinnaker Point is only 1, and people don't even know it exists, right behind Carver Club. My son worked for the major company. Before the shovel went in the ground, it was sold out. There is a need for it, and people want it. I know Mr. Gillette put up nice buildings, and now he has a second one coming up. Some of the seniors want to live in a home. They had to go to Spotswood, what they could afford in Clearbrook. Where is that considered to the residents of this community, for the services of this community? We have 1 grocery store. You can't buy a pair of shoes or a pair of pants, and I can't buy a dress in this town. That's sad. That's good planning? All they know how to plan in this community is houses, 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 which cause our taxes to rise. We have to educate all of them. With seniors, you wouldn't have to educate them. They would still be paying taxes, and you would be providing the seniors with this. And keep it that it's affordable. Where is it? Monroe has it, Spotswood has it, Sayreville. We have the property, we don't do it. None. The veterans, apparently, they would get first crack at housing, which they deserve. They're coming out. None.
Just so you understand, Barb, COA, veterans housing, senior housing, it's all subsidized housing. So somebody has to pay for it in the end, whether it's the municipality or the developer. The way that COA seems to be designed, and I'm certainly not an expert on it, is the state Supreme Court mandated that every community is given affordable housing quota. There are, I think, 2 states in the United States, I think it's New Jersey and Massachusetts. The other 48 don't have these COA obligations. To go back in time, up until this ruling came out from the Supreme Court, we thought we were in compliance. We worked very hard to be in compliance. Between all the, Sayreville is like 40% rentals. We every year, we
But
worked
that's
on
what I
this.
brought up a long time ago. I thought we fulfilled our obligation when Mr. Grillo pointed out that I didn't know what I was talking about at the time.
Well, let
when I
me
thought we had.
finish, Barb. Let me
Have.
finish. So, I'm talking with executives of other towns, and for them to strictly eliminate the private housing aspect, they're going to have to contribute. The number I was given, and I have no empirical data on this sitting here, is if you eliminate the market rate housing component of the COA obligation, the town is going to have to subsidize to whoever builds it $150,000 to $200,000 per unit, which if you multiply it out by our obligation, we're getting
Which is
out to
what,
like
in
30
400?
million, 700,
700?
780, I think. It gets far more expensive than we can afford.
And what about the 2,000 at the point? Does that fall under either COA? No.
No, they have a co-obligation.
200
do.
units.
The thing is, it's amazing that the hammer comes down on middle-class
Yes.
communities.
Yes.
All the affluent communities of the way the judicial system is working, Rumson, Bedminster, Basking Ridge, other affluent communities don't have this same obligation
They do.
that is placed on the taxpayers that we have.
Well,
But
they
there- I remember
relative.
Mount Laurel, there was a trade-off.
Barbara, Mount Laurel's over.
That's
All
how we
all
ended
this
with
stuff
Winding
is
Woods,
over.
yes.
And what was happening were, particularly the better off towns, they were selling, or they were paying, like Linden, Elizabeth, Newark, to buy their low-income component. But it changed kind of, well, for the last 8 years, it was nowhere. And then the state Supreme Court came in and they reviewed it. Fair Housing came in, they made some lawsuits, and the Supreme Court said, no one's paying attention to COA. These are the new COA laws and COA rules. Now, apparently, Rumson and Alpine and all the rest of the very expensive communities have an obligation. Whether they can sell it off, I don't know.
Well, tell
but-
me another thing. Is Pilot going to be on this? I mean, that they are going to get their discount on their property taxes? Payment in lieu of taxes, postponed, like we do in Morgan?
At the end of the day, they're not going to build at a loss. You know, anybody in business can't operate if they operate in a loss. So whether you like the builders, don't like the builders, they're not going to build at a loss. And as far as anybody in the audience that you know, you should be as an adversary to everybody that comes to Saraville to do business, you get less accomplished.
Well, I got news for you, Mayor. There's a lot of builders that don't want to come to Saraville. I told you this a long
All right.
time ago because of our reputation and everything else.
Hard to do
it's not a
business
very
with.
good, right,
We're
very
hard to do
difficult to do
business
business in Saraville, and they're
Yes.
not happy, and that we're here, do not want to come back. I
Well,
happen to
as
know this for a
hold on,
fact.
Barb.
And I
Hold
brought
on.
this up a long time ago.
Hold on. Council, I agree with Councilman Grillo that a study of the Route 35, Route 9 component located in Saraville is long overdue. It's certainly underutilized, and you know, we've never had a comprehensive plan done on those two areas. There's not that much left in Saraville. Again, the point is that has been the great hope for 18 years. It's a very slow process, as you've seen, as you've witnessed.
Well, I'm sure a lot of these developers too, they have no problems in Monroe building senior housing. They're all taken right away as soon as Renaissance, Stonehenge, as soon as they're built.
You know what Renaissance
They're
costs?
sold.
You know what Renaissance costs? That's
Yeah.
like $400,000 or $500,000
A lot of them are.
for a
Some are, and
senior for a
Stonehenge.
senior home.
Yes, that's why they went to Clearbrook and Spotswood,
That's
trust
why they
me,
went to-
for under 300,000.
But-
I understand
But the
that.
new ones are $400,000 and $500,000. They're large. They're beautiful.
Well, look at Town Lake. What was Town Lake?
I think I had a
Find it out.
discussion with Michael Kaplan, so everybody knows. I met with Michael because I thought it was incumbent upon me as the mayor to meet with people doing business in this town. And I said, Michael, I said, I'd like you to get $500,000 for a house. If you're going to build a house, I'd like
What
to get the
bothered me
tax.
about Mr. Kaplan was putting larger homes on smaller pieces of
No,
property.
no,
When he started out in Sayreville,
Barbara?
it was an acre. He went down. When he came back to Town Lake for the last time I was at that planning board meeting,
Yeah.
and so were you, Mayor, he wanted to build a larger per square footage home on a small piece of
Right,
property.
Which is what's happening, which we didn't let him do. It's still 20% lot coverage, which is a very antiquated.
But it was
But-
wrong.
But hold on, I think I got a phone call from him one day, many years ago, and he told me, he said, Mayor, I think I sold the house today for $550,000. Now, I told that to my stepmother, who grew up a couple houses up the street from this building, and she fell out of the kitchen chair when I told her a
Carol,
house in
I know
Sayreville
Carol, and
went-
she couldn't
Yeah.
believe that it would be worth it. I understand that. But Mayor, something has to be done about the planning. Something has to be done to encourage other than housing. The point, 2,000 homes, it sounded like a fine thing when it started, but then you have South Amboy. Sure, the park, what did they put in? Beautiful big
Do
homes
you know what
along
they-
the park
you know what they did
and
with,
townhouses, but here 2,000?
Barbara, do you
Who's
know what
gonna
they,
educate
Barbara,
them?
do you know what they did with the sand pit there in South Amboy? Jay, what's the name of the sand company?
McCormick Sand.
McCormick. I think that was 2,000 houses. And that was in one night. They went in front
Mayor,
of
don't
either
even
the
go there. I read the
planning or
newspaper, they
uh,
had 700,000 under budget for their taxes.
I beg your pardon?
They reduced their budget by $700,000. South Amboy was in the suburban.
you know.
No, so don't even go there. My thing is services for this community.
Barbara,
As seniors,
we do well. I'll disagree with you on that. We do a
well
lot
what?
with a
One
little.
grocery store for 43,000 people.
Barbara.
No
the path
stores,
mark up
no
at the,
medical
up
facilities.
At the top. Barbara, you forget your history.
Oh, I do?
When they were going to.
I just gave you the history of this community.
Okay. Well, we'll have the history coffee, Barbara, you and I. All right? But we can go on all night, and I don't want to do that.
I'm fourth or fifth generation in this community. I told you my great-grandmother's brother started the fire company and the
Okay.
first aid in this town. I have deep roots in this town. I care about the town, and I care about the people in this town.
Yep.
And that's what they're giving back. Why? Why is that beautiful building on Pulaski? They come and ask me like I know everything. I says, I don't know it. Go ask. Why is that empty?
What, the old bar?
Yeah, that's right, Swanee's. Gorgeous building, empty.
I couldn't tell you. Office buildings generally don't do well in
Half of
Sayreville.
the Sarahbrook this, shopping center by ShopRite, half of it, part of it, empty. Something is drastically wrong, and it's not that we don't need the facilities or
Right.
wouldn't use them.
Right.
So, planning, maybe you might have a fresh set of eyes.
Barb-
I know John worked for Susan Gruhl and for their company, so it's the same old, same old.
Yep.
But the planning stinks. You have three major arteries. You have Bordentown Avenue, Washington Road, Main Street. God forbid something happens, it's a tie-up. We had a recreation facility that turned into a religious facility that ties up the town. It belongs by Faith Fellowship. All I'm saying is poor, poor planning. Thank you.
Thanks,
Barbara, Barbara, stop. Barbara. I just wanted to respond to two specific questions you asked, because we actually did make progress at our June 1st meeting regarding seniors and veterans. I'll start with the seniors. It's a little bit more nebulous, but when affordable housing is calculated on area median income, oftentimes seniors on fixed incomes do qualify for affordable housing. So we have to see how everything shakes out, but there certainly will be a senior component for standalone homes. It's pretty typical in affordable housing. The other one is the veterans question, which Councilwoman Kilpatrick had brought up a number of months ago, and we took action on that June 1st. We actually voted to empower SERA to look at the River Road site that is in this proposal. They want to do 7 or 8 story towers, which would be veteran preferenced housing. So I said, fine, I think we should all entertain that. So that is the current, I should say that's the big piece of the COA plan right now, focused on veterans.
Well, do you know what
to be
gets me,
produced by
Mr.
SERA.
Grillo? That's Sarah. That property was
Tellerico's.
Tellerico's that ended up back into the community for tax am I correct?
Yeah.
We don't need housing in a section where there's a barrel factory and there's Neptune and you know what I mean, and part of it, and right away a high rise. I know with Sandy, what did the Rutgers study recommend? In right here at the park, a high rise. So we're turning Sayreville into a real urban community with high rises, turning it into an Elizabeth and a Linden with huge high rises. Mr. Gillette had difficulty with Sarah to get the second senior housing because that was, I guess, located in a Sarah recommendation. Am I right?
Area in need of redevelopment.
Right. So, need of redevelopment. It seems our Sarah went into housing and not economical, to help us to retrieve our taxes with industry or whatever.
Not getting any fight from me on Sarah.
Pardon me?
Not getting any fight from me on Sarah.
No, but this is where, I'm sorry, that's not what it was meant. It was an industrial commission. Then it turns into Mr. Zagata, who was mayor, made Sayreville Economic Redevelopment to bring back the rateables for the community, for our taxpayers.
Well,
and what are they doing? They went into now residential in Morgan. And what do they do right off the bat? Give it a pilot with children to educate. So between Sarah, I'm sorry, the planning board, I've lost all faith in a community that I care about, that I want revitalized. You know I know a lot of people in Morgan, and they came back to you and they told, and I totally agree with them. And it's just a shame that I see this happening. I came back with one, I think it was a Republican councilman, that we wanted to start I don't know, nothing ever became of that. Remember when I told you, brought in all aspects? Because Sayreville has a very bad reputation out there. People do not want to do business in Sayreville. So we tried to correct it. It went nowhere. And they looked at all their ordinances. Their ordinances are out of whack, a lot of them, from shade tree to everything. So I don't know. I try. I want it. But I think maybe they need a new, fresh set of eyes other than Susan Gruhl's, because Susan Gruhl's, too, was John's. So things have to change in this community. And Gillette, he didn't even build it. I'm sure he would have had that building full to capacity again. There was a waiting list, and that was apartments. But a lot of seniors and couples would like to own their own home and would like a senior complex like they have in other communities.
Barbara, I don't think that'll ever happen in Sayreville. It's just not going to happen. Young lady? How are you? Good, thanks.
Ruth Ann Mahoney, 2 Gerard Place in Parlin. I'm here just to say, you do need, I guess I'm saying help. We tell children, ask for help when you're not sure or when things aren't well. I think that's all that people are asking with this planner bit person. I don't know her. I don't know planning well at all. It's new. But what's wrong to ask for help? You don't have a lot of time, so you don't have a lot of time to look for somebody. But if you need, we tell children this. Why is there such a problem with it? I don't understand. And as far as the planning board goes, I think I expressed this once before. I was told I was taking up their pizza time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Jack Piskorski, Hilltop Avenue. I'd like to know what the results was from the survey on going-ons on Hilltop.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, we're talking about this resolution.
Oh, we're just on this resolution. You have to wait for the public portion, which is for any and all issues. We're just talking about hiring a second planner, sir. I'll give you a nod when we're at that point. Are there any other questions or comments? Being no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion.
Mayor, I move the public portion be closed.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick? Yes. Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Vote on resolution.
Mayor, I move the resolution be approved.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
No.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Lembo?
No.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Pass, Mayor.
Okay, we're going to go into an executive session. Bob, how long? 15 minutes, everyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor, at this time, the Borough of Saraville needs executive session in accordance with the Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, whereas this public body is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist. Now therefore be resolved by the Mayor and Council of Borough of Saraville, the public portion of this meeting is hereby adjourned in order that the governing body may meet in closed private session for approximately 15 minutes to discuss litigation. Following the conclusion of said closed session, the governing body should...
Personnel.
And personnel too. Considering any of the matters which may be properly brought before at this time, minutes will be kept. Once the matter involving confidentiality above no longer requires that confidentiality, then the minutes can be resolved. Therefore, be resolved that the public be excluded, and this resolution shall take effect immediately.
Move
Is
the
there a
resolution
motion?
be approved.
Second.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'm going to hit that first.
Okay.
Chief, if you would. Yeah, for the police vacation portion.
He's part of it. He's got 80 days. He can't go.
Can he, do me a favor and ask Bob. Which one's mine? This one? Yeah. Oh. That's a sign. You know, there was a meme on Facebook today, and it had something to do, what are elephants and cows teach us? That eating salad and walking doesn't lose weight.
Need a motion to go into open?
Sorry, Chief.
Make a motion to reconvene?
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments on any and all issues. Is that Mr. Tanner? Steve, the gentleman you're talking to, it's his turn. Okay. You're impeding progress, Steve. Yeah, okay. Come on up, sir. Your turn.
John Poskorski, 8 Hilltop Avenue, Saraville. Reason why I was here, I wanted to know, well, fella just told me about the report on what was going on Hilltop Avenue. I think the report's totally wrong. There's more than 1% of the cars that he says are speeding. He has to go there and spend some time in the day and see how the traffic goes through there every day. And there isn't one, I would say maybe 2 cars out of 100 that do 25.
Okay, wait a minute, Steve, does this give the methodology of the report of the gathering of the data?
Yes, so I have a memo that was prepared by the police department in respect to this study, which we had, I think in December, we had met on to figure out what was the speeding issue on Hilltop and Lee. They did a 6-day study in April. They came back with the results. I'll provide you with the memo. I have your address. I'll mail it to you. 1% of the cars they found were speeding. So I know that you agree to disagree on this, but the police did what we asked them to do. They spent 6 days studying this with electronic speed tracking. The numbers were more than conclusive, 1%. So what they did suggest is, of course, the stop sign at Hilltop and Lee is being run. They're going to put enforcement there. The same thing with trucks, but you got to catch a truck. You can't sit there 24 hours a day. Those were the 2 recommendations. But in terms of speeding, there was absolutely no evidence that there was a speeding problem.
Well, I must be blind because I never seen that tape across the street. I go up and down that street quite a bit in the course of a day.
Well, it's not there anymore.
I know it's not there. You're telling me it was there for 6 days.
It was.
Well, like I says, I never seen it, and I can't believe it.
I'll send you a
Besides,
memo and then...
when the police do come on Hilltop, he spends about 10, 15 minutes there, and then he disappears. What can you do in 10 or 15 minutes? Maybe he's coming there with a time when the traffic might be slow at that minute.
Steve, if you could also get from Sergeant Barlinski, in a month's time or 2 months' time, how many times are there on a traffic control?
Sure.
We'll get you the data.
And I know what you're saying, Mayor. I seen them because they park right up the street from where I live.
Okay.
And
no, we're trying to make the quality of life better on your streets, sir.
Right, I understand. But in other terms, what would be going on to get the rest of them sidewalks put in? Are just waiting for somebody to get hit by a car and killed out there before anything's done?
Oh, you mean on Hillside?
Yeah.
Jay?
Hilltop.
Hilltop, rather.
Mayor, we've provided the council with cost estimates on
Right.
a number of occasions as per this resident's request, so it's really a policy decision if you wanted to move forward with it.
You know, Jay, just put it on the next agenda for discussion, along with the price. But you know, that's coming up from Washington Road there, that's pretty steep.
I understand what
The
you're
o- the
saying.
other
Steep,
thing-
what do you mean by steep, Mayor?
Well, it's steep. You're going up a small hill, a small incline there.
It's just a small incline.
Okay,
Right.
but the other thing is, I think it's 6 feet of your front lawn you lose to put a sidewalk in, Jay?
It's going to be a 4-foot wide
Oh,
sidewalk.
4 foot and 1 foot. It's about 5 foot.
5 foot, all right. And,
I just put all new ones in my
okay.
my house
On the Lee Avenue
on
side.
Hilltop.
On Hilltop, okay. Okay.
But I would like to see that continued all the way down the street right up to Washington Road.
Well, we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, I know, but,
you know.
because when Paul Guy built the houses, he told the people your property looked better with grass. He didn't want to put the sidewalks in.
Well, apparently,
That same thing
apparently he
for-
was a good salesman.
Right, and same thing, we don't have no storm drainage or nothing on that street.
Right.
And one more question I'd like to ask too is, on the, you're talking about all these houses are gonna be put up in Main Street in Cerebral.
Right.
Whatever happened to the Main Street Extension Road by the river? Why was that project started and never finished?
Jay?
It hasn't stopped. The borough is in the process of acquiring the permits that are necessary to build the roadway. The Army Corps of Engineers is currently reviewing it, so that's the status. It's being reviewed by an outside agency to get the necessary permits.
Yeah, I know that, but this has been going on for quite a few years already. I mean, you're talking about more houses. You go on Main Street, I go to Bamehurst Avenue quite a bit, and I gotta, from the police station all the way down to Bamehurst, it's bumper to bumper at quitting time. And now you're gonna put more houses? Why the heck don't you just make provisions to finish that road? Put somebody, to have some, know-how to push this thing forward.
Well, it's the Army Corps of Engineers. The borough has been attempting to push them to get this moving. I met with them personally a month or so ago. We spent 3 hours walking up and down, looking at the alignment, pointing out the reasons why it was justified, and it's back in their hands to continue the review.
Didn't they approve Phase 1 and Phase 2 with that last meeting?
The application is for Phase 1. That's what the permit applications are pending for. And the next step in the process is to have a public review period. So once they complete their evaluation, there'll be a public review period. After that, they'll make a determination as to whether a permit's going to be issued.
How long does that typically take?
Well, this is, as was indicated, this is
How
the
long
years.
should that typically take?
It's not uncommon for the Army Corps to spend years reviewing an application, unfortunately.
Years.
And we're beyond years at this point.
Right, so is there any other, I know last time I made my plea to Frank Pallone, and that's how we at least got that meeting set up with you and the Army Corps of Engineers back a handful of months ago. So do we need to reach out to other individuals again in order to kick this back into gear?
It doesn't hurt to do whatever you can to try to make them
Because I
move
think
forward.
on the bill list, I think there was another bill in reference to the bypass. Was that you?
I think it probably was for our meeting with the Army Corps, or at least having discussions with the Army Corps.
Right, Main Street bypass, on the bill list, it was, yeah, 480 for CME. This is dating back to the 12th, it looks like. So there's still discussion or something going
It's
on.
ongoing follow-up. After we had the meeting, they are supposed to go through, and as I indicated, get it to the point where it's going to have a public hearing, a public notice period, and we've been following up with them, trying to find out when that's going to happen, providing them information if necessary.
Yeah, because it seems like the longer that it goes out, the bills keep coming, but there's no progress that moves along.
As
So-
far as progress with moving toward construction, at this point, no. It's
Any suggestions on who else we can reach out to? I mean, I'll call Pallone's office again. He seemed to be the most beneficial with who I reached out to.
That helped last time, so.
We'll give it a shot again, see what happens. I
Oh,
agree with you.
I think
It's
you should
out-
do what you can do. Before they put all these houses, I think that road should be opened.
I agree
And alleviate
110%.
half of the traffic that's on Main Street right now.
Yeah,
'cause it's
you took
atrocious.
some of my questions for later because, you know, with the accident that we had with the, you know, car going into the house, unfortunately, that road, you know, all the surrounding roads again got jammed up and was a complete disaster. I was hoping that there was more progress moving along, but apparently we've got another stall situation.
Well, you
so-
gotta get behind them and push them.
Yeah, I pushed last time, I'll push again. I mean,
All right.
thank you.
Another one, not that tie up everything. Can you enlighten me what's going on with the National Ed property? I hear so many pros and cons that half of the stuff that was okayed by the borough for what they were supposed to build and everything is cut almost in half. That they're not going to put it up.
I don't know. I don't sit on Sarah. Vicky, you sit on Sarah.
Pat and I both do, and at this point, we are waiting for more feedback every single meeting in order to find out where Prudential right now is with negotiations with the developer and who's really going to be taking complete control over that project. Pat, am I correct in my speaking?
Absolutely. Whoever ends up taking over control of the project, there's going to be major changes. They're not
And-
gonna-
Right, I heard
not just
that's,
somebody's gonna
what's his
step
name,
in and
backed out,
do
and
that
now
plan
it's in
exactly.
limbo.
It's
To what
slim to none,
extent,
so-
like Pat's saying, to what extent, you know, a new developer is gonna come to the table and say, we wanna make this amendment, that amendment, we have no idea at this point. It's a terrible situation to be in, but it really is. We're
Yeah, I
kind of
mean,
lying in wait.
They promised you something that they were gonna put up. Now they changed their mind in midstream.
Yeah, it's extremely concerning. There's not one person, I think, that sits on Sarah right now that is not completely at a point where we're concerned about what the future is going to hold. I mean, I know one thing that we do talk about is, are they going to push for more housing? Why wouldn't they push for more housing? You know, a lot of the amenities that we had in that original plan that was developed however long ago, there are a lot of benefits here for the town. I mean, Pat, I think you were able to review that once you finally came on. It's a scary thing. I'll tell you right now, though, that the people in the room are fighting hard to turn around and at least maintain what was originally agreed upon. I would be lying to you if any of us told you we had a magic, you know.
Well, I'm only bringing
Really
up from what
nothing
I
to
hear
know
on
until
the outside.
A new contractor is in place.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you very much, Mayor Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square. I'd like to echo what this gentleman said about the Main Street bypass and the bumper-to-bumper traffic. I was on the planning board when the previous master plan called for that bypass. That was many, many years ago. I know those things take long. Mayor, you weren't here at the workshop meeting last week or the week before. Councilman Buchanan ran the meeting. It was very productive. But I left my home near Jackson Avenue. It took me 40 minutes. I came to the meeting late, and you know how I don't like to be late to these meetings. 40 minutes. And I came down Main Street. I got out to Jackson Avenue, Washington Road, and I saw the traffic there, and it was backed up all the way to the light by Ernston Road. So I went Main Street. 40 minutes to get here. So, you know, I don't know if it means asking the federal government or the Army Corps of Engineers to speed things up, and I know that is more easily said than done. You know, we have money for things like that litigation, that $1.3 million that we just spent to lose a case. Maybe some of that money would be better spent on doing what we can to move this along. But I do want to echo those comments. That's not what I came here to say, though. Just so that I understand, Mayor, in response to Ken Olszewski's comment, did you say that years ago you appointed a planner based on the recommendation of the vice chairman of the Republican Party, or did I mishear that?
I had a discussion with the chairman and the vice chairman, which is not at all unusual, Jim, as you know, since you taught me that 20-odd years ago. It's not an uncommon practice, and as such, you discuss it with other people. You were probably, early on, one of the people I had discussions
Mayor, one of
with
the things that
about the planning board appointments.
One of the things that I tried to teach you was about hiring competent professionals and appointing good planning board members. And as you recall, when you first ran for mayor and asked me if I could help you with a slogan, I told you I would, and you could use it if you made it not just your slogan, but your mantra. And that was, make Sayreville better, not bigger. I tried to teach you that, too, but that was years ago, and things changed. But let me ask you, when you had the conversation with Mr. Kaplan about building the $500,000 homes, when was that approximately?
Oh, God, I would think when the town lake was new. you know, new in the sense of being developed.
Yeah. Did you have any discussions with him then about an affordable housing component?
Just out of being in compliance with our local, whatever we needed to be in
Because I don't
compliance
think
with.
they did anything there, and
They
I
may
think
not have needed it, Jim.
I think it. Well, apparently we do.
No, apparently we do today, we didn't then. So don't confuse the two.
No, these things
You're-
didn't
You're
pop
very
up.
good at that.
These things didn't pop up automatically and overnight. This
Jim?
was an obligation that was ongoing that should have been addressed over the years for the last 12, 15
It
years.
was addressed,
In
Jim.
fact, one of the ordinances
Jim,
that
Are
I
you
hope
gonna
you're
keep
going,
talking,
public
or
portion,
is
please,
this a
Mayor.
monologue or a dialogue? So you make your statement and then you go sit down and then I'll answer it.
I would appreciate it, Mayor, if I could make my statement.
right
And
ahead,
I'm-
Jim.
And I just for the record, so that people aren't misled by what you just said
They're
about
listening
this
to
hitting
you,
us
they're
all of a
misled.
sudden. There are a lot of towns that years ago implemented ordinances so that when things were built, people had to contribute to a fund, so that when it came time to build affordable housing or housing for veterans or housing for disabled or housing for victims of domestic abuse or people who age out of care, that there would be a fund. And that a lot of towns did that about 12, 15 years ago. Unfortunately, we were not.
Now, was that
one of
done
them.
under your tenure, Jim?
No.
No.
Back
Wow,
then,
geez, wow.
back then, we were compliant, Mayor. And back then, nobody was doing those ordinances.
Jay,
As I said, about 12,
were we
15 years ago.
compliant as
This is
long-
the public portion, though, Mayor, and I would appreciate it if I could ask my
I
question.
run the meeting, Jim.
Because
not
there was...
Jim Robinson.
Mayor.
Understand, Jim Robinson does not run this meeting, no matter how much you'd like to. So
I'm trying
I
to
have
ask
a
a question,
question
though. It's the public
for my
portion,
engineer. That's fine. I'm asking
Okay,
a question.
thank you for allowing me to ask the
to
question.
elicit, so Jay, as far as I remember, up until about 8 years ago, the general, I was told we were pretty much in compliance. Then COA COA didn't exist, or it was halted, went into limbo. There was no COA until the Supreme Court came out with this ruling. Is that approximately correct?
Unfortunately, Mayor, I haven't been involved with the co-aspect on behalf of the borough, so I really don't want to
Okay.
comment on the timeframe.
Well,
Mayor, I think you're
anyone wishing to go
I
to the
think you're
planning board can
confusing
verify that.
the affordable housing obligation with the COA office. They are two different things, and folks who don't know a lot about this often confuse them, so that's understandable. But let me just ask this. Last meeting, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I came and I handed the order, the judge's order with respect to the Fulton Landing, and that was just 4 or 5 pages. I'm sure everybody read that. And since that time, maybe some of you have seen the 67-page decision. I'll email you a copy. Mayor, do you have a copy of it?
I have copies of everything.
Okay, did you get a chance to read it?
I have copies of everything, Jim. Make your point.
Well, you know, I have cigars too, and I don't smoke, and there's a big difference between having them and reading them, and that shows. But let me ask this: since that came down, that cost the taxpayers $1.3 million to lose that suit. Has the borough had any discussion about whether or not, well, have you reached out to Mr. Mocco at all to, of course, as I said before, when I urged you to settle this suit before there was a decision, has anybody reached out to him to see if he can play a role in assisting us with our affordable housing obligation, number one? And number two, has the town had any discussion about this whatsoever? You're going to let this stand? I hope you're not going to appeal it, because the $1.3 million was a lot of money. I would hate for this to be $2.6 million. So has the council discussed this at all? Has the governing body discussed it all? Mayor, have you given any direction to staff or to the administrator or to the attorneys or to anybody with respect to this?
Let's ask the rest of the governing body. What is the position of the rest of the governing body on these questions?
I'm asking you, Mayor.
No, Jim, I'm redirecting. It's not your meeting, it's my meeting.
I understand. That's why,
So,
that's
Jim,
why I'm asking you, because it's your
Jim,
meeting, Mayor.
Jim,
I'm asking you.
Jim, it's not your meeting, so behave.
I understand. It's your meeting,
No,
so I'm
let me-
asking you
let-
the question.
I shall ask my professionals and my colleagues. Any professionals or colleagues?
I'd just like to say one thing. I raised my hand before to talk, but I wasn't allowed to. The special master was quite surprised that Kaplan was not required to put a 20% set aside for all of the building he's done in town over the recent years. Very surprised. And she said she was going to look into it. And she got back to us and said that they wanted to do it, but the planning board said they weren't interested in any affordable housing because it would bring too many kids into the school system. Now, the same developers that were able to build all houses, you know, at market rate are now being allowed to have their property that they have now rezoned and to get 15% of the same people that made a windfall years ago are making a windfall again, because now they're saying, oh, we'll do 15% if you let us build on property that's now zoned for business, build on property that's now zoned for prime, and build on property that's residential if we can double and triple the amount of numbers we have on there. Big windfall. Thank you. And as far as Peter Mocco, basically what we were told by the professionals is, you know, there's no way that this is going to change, that the developers have more say in this than we do. So Peter Mocco may, it's, to my understanding, if he builds there, he's going to have part of it. But it isn't going to change the windfall for these other developers right now.
Yeah.
It'll just be an addition to.
I don't know that. I think he should be made to participate in the affordable housing obligation, and maybe somebody should talk to him to see if there is some scenario under which he would do more than his obligation. You're right. Laws are often tilted in the direction of builders. If you read that case, though, it was replete with incident after incident after incident where the planning board and what they did with the planner, what was done there. And the judge did not look favorably upon that. As a layman, I looked at that and I said, and as somebody who chaired the planning board for years, I looked at that and I said, I can't believe they did that. The judge called the adoption of the ordinance a sham, the way the hearing was conducted. I read that and I thought that's kind of strong language, but I've been coming to council meetings lately and maybe the judge was just being accurate. Mr. Lembo, you sit on the planning board. Any?
Jimmy, you're over the 10-minute mark, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, well, please speak quickly then, Councilman.
The planning board discussed it, and their feeling was not to appeal anything. The way it's zoned right now, Mocco does have the authorization to build on 75 by 100. It's 207 housing units. The opinion is that's not what he really wants to do. He really wants to go with the mega warehousing. So the consensus was to not do anything at this point. If he does opt to build housing, he's certainly going to be held accountable to our co-obligation to it, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Tom?
Thomas Bashada, 17 Green Hill Avenue, Parlin, New Jersey. First of all, am I correct that you have a new developer for the Point?
Not yet.
Which is the old National Lead property. Is that what I understood that was set up here just a few minutes ago? That there's a new developer?
It's not
Pat,
official
correct
yet.
me. Correct. Go ahead, Pat. I'll let you speak.
It's not official yet. Prudential has talked to a number of people. It's pretty much set who they would prefer to go to. It hasn't been formalized yet.
Okay, I
think
just want the
Prudential is
council
still
to
in
know
negotiations,
that
that's
I
all.
gave you information several years ago
Remember.
about him, the
I remember.
developer, and it came back and it's biting you right where I told you it would bite you. Okay, second thing, Chief, I'm glad you're here tonight. Quality of life, Deerfield Road. We need radar traps on radar. We do. I'm going to tell you what, in the morning, these people are flying. I'm telling you, 60, 70 miles an hour. I take a walk every morning. And I'm going like this here. You know what they do? They gave me half the peace sign all the time. They give me the finger. And I mean, it's a joke, okay? If you want to add revenue, and I may be guilty of it too at times. I may go 30 miles an hour. But when you got people, and in the afternoon, we'll say from 2 to 3 o'clock, there's a group of young people that come out of the high school. They're barreling up that street. And I mean, please put a radar trap. Same thing with Pulaski Avenue. I'm going 25 miles an hour. I pull out of Deerfield, and I got people on my rear end beeping the horn, like pull over, obscene gestures and all that. I'm trying to do the speed limit. Again, there's quality of life, and it's not your fault if we can just reinforce what the laws are. My main concern here tonight is I've been in contact with Jay and Jeff Gerstacker. They did my street 3 years ago, okay? The street's falling apart. Believe me. It's cracking from Maple Street up to Deerfield. There's a crack right in the middle, and water's in there every time. And you know what happens with water when it freezes, or water, what it does? It cracks, okay? My main concern, and believe me,
Tom, is there, do you have a lot of springs in your area, or
No,
do you think it's a water pipe that's cracked?
it's a bad job.
No, do you think it's a water, where's the leak coming from?
The water is evidently the cracks, the pavement, when they do two sides of the street.
Right.
The center line is what happened is they didn't seal it properly, and water got in there, and it's just eating it and cracking it lengthwise. There's only about 660
How
feet.
long ago was your street done?
Recently.
I'm going to say about 3 years ago. It's roughly in that.
Dan, if you would look at that, because
And it's
find
not-
out who the contractor was, if in fact
Well,
it
I've been in
comes out.
contact with Jay. If I can continue, first of all. After they did paving on my street, they cracked my first step coming up out of the street. It's a concrete step. DK
Yeah.
Concrete did my sidewalk going to my house and the steps. They came twice. They put caulking in there, and I'll tell you what, I don't want to use the term, but it's not a very professional job. And if I was to sell my house, that's the first thing that the people that are going to go under contract are going to.
But Tom, 3 years later, they're.
No, this has been going on from the day that they finished the job.
You've
I've
had
been
ongoing discussions?
ongoing with Jay, ongoing with Jeff Gerstacker. You know, I back off a little bit because I'm supposed to get some progress. I called Jay's office about 5 weeks ago, and Jay told me tonight they're working on it. But the point is that my
Have we released a bond with those guys, Jay?
Mayor, what happened was, this all came about during the maintenance bond period on the project. The developer, or the contractor, was put on notice that there were issues on the maintenance bond. He
Right.
attempted to go through and address the problem. Mr. Bashada is still not satisfied, so we've been trying to work with the contractor to get him to come back and resolve it to Mr. Bashada's satisfaction.
Did he break the steps?
There's a crack in his step that needs to be repaired. He attempted to repair
Repaired or
it.
replaced?
Well, Mr. Bashada now wants it replaced. We thought
Just
that by...
If you can replace it, it's 3 years is a long
I
time.
think, Mayor, what I told Mr. Bashada was at this point, we may need to get the borough attorney involved to send some
Okay.
letters to try to
You know,
get
if
this
we
moving
can just get it,
forward.
you know, and it's, you know, other people that had things, you know, they opened up the street, you know, I've heard the line that, you know, if you open up the street, you're going to do damage to it. They opened up, 2 weeks later, they opened up a fire hydrant in front of my neighbor's house, this street, and it's fine. But again, you know, this is an ongoing battle. It looks like, you know what, and,
Right.
you know, you don't put a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
like, and what I was telling Jay at the beginning of the meeting, if I can, I'm going to get an estimate from DK Concrete, and I'm going to submit it, and I'm not paying for it. I didn't do the damage.
Right.
We had a contractor, and he probably charged you about, and the curbs are all beat up also. They're cracked. So he probably charged the town about $1 million to do that street for 660 feet. And I mean, it's a joke. So if you could, please, I'm before you, could we get this resolved in the next few months? So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Are there any other questions or comments? Doug?
Doug Umprick, President of Cerevel PBA Local 98. I have a question. I know it's no secret that our litigation has already come and gone. I've been emailing Mr. Frankel about the rumors that have set forth about lost vacation time. I'm just here to find out if tonight in your executive session you've made a decision, because as you know, time is of the essence for us to file appeals, and we can't have this drag out any longer. So I'm here before the mayor and council tonight to see if there was any action
Doug, I
taken.
have to have the attorney answer the question. I'm not sure if it's still in litigation or if it's out of litigation.
At this point in time, you know, it's still in litigation. I would suggest you have counsel for the PBA contact Mr. Merriam tomorrow.
Well, the problem is Mr. Merriman has got his own philosophies on lost days and what he's pushing across. And I thought the whole purpose here today was that it was going to be resolved here tonight, and I would have an answer.
I'm not quite sure who told you that. It was an explanation.
It was an email that Mr. Frankel and I have been communicating through that it would be addressed here tonight, because I've asked Mr. Frankel on a couple separate emails if we can get an answer here, because we have 45 days to file appeals with regards to our litigation.
Right, and I don't think the time period's close to expiration, but I would...
But it shouldn't have to, Mr. Dupont. It shouldn't be the 13th hour.
Well, it's not the 13th hour. I don't,
Make sure he gets an answer
Right.
tomorrow, if you would,
And
please.
so if you'd have, if you can call me tomorrow and I can get Mr. Merriman on the phone, that would be great. You have my contact information, you have my email, cell phone
Yes,
number,
sir.
so feel free to call me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Barbara?
I'll make it quick. Barbara Kilcummins. This is the third time in less than a year, twice in 1 week, that traffic was detoured down Schmidt Street. It was blocked off right on Main Street, right before my street. The problem being is everyone gets detoured, but they don't know where to go.
Right.
They don't know. I've had Academy buses. I had Brinks trucks. I had tractor trailers. And this was continuous because it was 28 hours it was closed. It was constant traffic down a small residential street. None of them could make a right-hand turn to get to Pulaski from Schmidt. So they had to go all the way up to Deerfield. There's Batista. If you went right, it's a cul-de-sac, it's a dead end. They're not familiar with the area. There wasn't one detour sign placed in the 3 times. And this is Mr. Bartlinski's problem and his job. I know they have a pickup truck, they have barriers, and I don't know if the borough puts them on or who, but all they do is block the street off.
Barb, I'll find out what the protocol is, and we'll make it better.
3 times,
Okay.
1 year.
I'm sorry that
I
that
have
you went through
been
this.
in East Brunswick with a detour. I was just off Englishtown Road when they detoured Texas Road. We went all through residential areas. There was a detour sign to guide you right through back on to bypass it. And this is twice that I have been in detours in Old Bridge. In Saraville, nothing.
All right. Well, we'll make it a better process. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Being no other questions or comments, yes, sir.
R. Walzak, 238 Cat Street. I want to get back to the police hiring. My first question is, who handles at Borough Hall the list when it goes to civil service? Is that...
I think Mr. Frankel.
So when we hired in January, who made the decision to hold that certification and not turn it back in?
Mr. Frankel.
Is there a reason why you did that, Mr. Frankel?
Because we needed to hire more people, and
No.
we weren't done with the list.
Knowing that the new list was coming out in March, you decided you were going to hold the old list.
In January, we held the list, not knowing when the new list was coming out, correct?
Okay, but now we know the new list was out in March.
I think it was more like April, sir.
No, it was March. It became active March 31st.
That's pretty close to April.
Okay, and then there was also an issue of a conflict of interest with the voting, of which the attorney said it's not a conflict of interest because all they voted on was the hire. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay, but then we had votes whether should we turn the old list in and certify the new one. But who voted on that? The people that have relatives on the old list. So isn't that a conflict of interest? Was a ruling made on that? I believe somebody said they were going to look into that further.
No, I believe that the attorneys present, Labor Counsel and the counsel who was present said there was no conflict.
There was no conflict after these borough ordinances were read at either the last meeting or the one before that?
That's correct.
I believe someone was here. Did you ever get an answer like that? Did you get an answer from the attorney?
Sorry, Mr. Walzak, Heather, you can't do that. You have to go through the...
Okay, the other thing, the last meeting, Mr. Buchanan, you said you had Mr. Frankel stand up about all the police overtime the previous Friday. Well, hiring right now off of that old list is not going to do anything with overtime until April or May of 18. So why are you in such a hurry now to hire when the academy doesn't start till August 29th?
It was showing that there was a lack of officers in the department and a need
Right,
for
there's
hiring.
a need to hire, but
Right.
not off the old list 2 months early before the academy starts. And that's what we voted on here. You voted to hire off the old list, correct?
No, we voted to hire individuals. Then Mr. Lembo asked to vote to hire off of old list, new list, and that wasn't for us to decide. Never has this council decided on that before. It's always been done through civil service.
But you're holding the certification preventing the new list from coming out.
I'm not holding any list. This council doesn't hire. This council gets recommendations and they're hired through the police department.
No, we hire them.
At the last meeting, I did make a
Recommendation of the
motion
police
to call for a new list. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I was going to wait for the next part of the meeting, but seeing as how you brought it up, Mike, you were going to speak to Mr. Clark about the misinformation he gave us regarding that there was no list on May 1st, when in fact we know now there was.
No, I spoke to, Mr. Frankel and I spoke to Mr. Clark regarding that. It was his opinion that you acted legally in accordance with voting on the list that existed, that you were required to vote or to use that list, and I think he placed that opinion on the record.
No, but he specifically said there is no list when there was.
No, I'm talking about his legal opinion was that you were required to use the existing list in your possession.
That's not true. We could have voted to send it, but we could have sent it back at any time.
No, according to Mr. Clark and Mr. Frankel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if my summary of the conversation was not accurate, but Mr. Clark did indicate that it was his legal opinion and you were legally obligated to use the existing list in your possession to make the recommendation to hire.
And he also, again, specifically said, there is no new list. If you were to call for a new list, there is none. And that is wrong. There was a new list.
That's correct, but he was still of the opinion that at the time, his legal opinion was that you were obligated to use the existing list in your possession. He didn't change that opinion.
I think where everybody gets confused is for, as long as I've been here, the protocol was when we were going to hire a police officer, we would send to civil service for a hiring list. They would send it to us, we would use it, we would get our candidates off of it, and we would hire off that list. Right after that process was done, that list was returned to civil service till the next time we needed a civil service hiring list. In this particular case, in January, it was not returned. It was not the normal protocol. We kept, or the list was kept here, and it was not returned to civil service. Usually it's returned within days of the hiring. So that's where that's where the system changed.
Mayor, may I?
Yes.
I went to Becky because I knew that just last year we certified a list, we hired off of it, we knew we were going to hire again before the 6 months ran out. We kept the cert, and we did hire again off of the same cert without recertifying it. After we hired that last person, we then disposed of the cert. I went to Becky. She went back 10 years. In 10 years, we have done this 3 times, counting this one. So it was also done in 2007. Now, we've also had lists where we chose to not hire off the civil service list at all, and hire people that never even took a civil service test because they've been laid off in other towns. So there has been a lot of different things that have happened. I guess the mayor has forgotten, but this is only the past 10 years. That's as far as Becky went back. So out of those years, 3 years, we have kept the list and hired from it again. 2 years, we didn't hire at all. 2 years, we hired off of the Rice list, which is police officers that are laid off in other towns. They've never even taken a civil service list, and they were veterans sitting on a civil service list. But for the betterment of the town, we hired off of the Rice list. So to say that this has never happened before and this is strange, I don't know. I guess people were sleeping during these meetings.
Well, no, it never happened before when there was a new list ready to come out. It's one thing in the middle of a list, but when you have an old list that is already a year past, it was supposed to expire in May of 16. Why would you continue to hold it for another full year? Now you're 3 years into this list. This list came out May of 14 with an expiration of May of 16. Because civil service didn't give the test in 16, it went a year longer. So why are we holding a list that's already gone 1 full year longer when you know there's another list ready to go, and in 2 or 3 days you would have it if you turn the old one in?
Just so you know, back in the 90s, we recognized that there was a problem with not necessarily hiring, but promotional lists. We had no table of organization, so there was no regulation on how many sergeants, how many lieutenants, how many captains. So we developed a table of organization, and we also put in there that, because before, if you were number 10 on a list and they wanted to get to you, they'd promote 10 sergeants. And then the next time, since we were now overloaded with sergeants, we wouldn't promote any. So we tried to get, although civil service is wonderful in trying to take politics out of it, we also saw that there was problems, and we developed a table of organization. In that table of organization, it also says whether you're filling a promotional slot or hiring, you must do so you must call for a cert and hire within 45 days. This should have been, we've had vacancies since April 1st.
Mary, I think it's more relevant if we go what our protocol is this century than last century.
We're not talking about last century. This is a borough ordinance that is still in effect today.
If we're in the 90s, we're in the last century.
It's a borough ordinance that is in effect today. I know, I remember when I first got back on the council, had a meeting with the chief, and he was dumbfounded to find out that he was concerned there was vacancies that the borough did not fill. And he spoke to me right after, it was in January, maybe February, and he wanted to now, he figured the council would follow the ordinance and fill those positions, only for me to have to tell him that without any knowledge of consent or anything in the police department, after you realized that you hadn't filled these positions by borough ordinance, you just eliminated them from the table of organization without even telling them. So I know that you don't like to follow ordinances if they don't fit your criteria. But this is a borough ordinance.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with some people about this very thing. We have no ordinance with a minimum or a maximum.
Yes, we do.
We don't have the table of I don't think we have
yes,
it
we do.
in the ordinance format, but I'll check, Mary. I could be wrong.
Mayor, we had a special meeting to make tweaks to that last December.
I will check. But let's get back to this list.
For the record,
the list is, we can go back now.
I'd just like to get one thing straight for the record. So you're telling me, Mike, Mr. Clark's opinion is that we do not have the legal right to return that list?
Oh, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you are obligated to use the existing list in your possession. You still have the legal right to return the list, yes?
Sure you can. You can still hire. We ask for a new list. We'll have it in a few days, and we can hire. So I'll make that motion again to return that old list and call for the new list.
Motion made. Is there a second?
I seconded it last time. I'll second it again.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Roll call. And the motion is to return the old list to civil service and to request a new list.
Again, Mayor, I would like to put on the record the comments that I made last time and this time. I'm asking for a legal opinion because...
Well, we didn't get it the
people
last
in-
time, so let's vote on it this time.
Excuse me, Mayor, I had the floor. There's people that have been interviewed, there's people that have been background checked, there's people throughout this process, all different phases of this process. And if we go back, I'm afraid that we may be opening ourselves up to litigation.
No promise of employment has been made.
No, we had some discussions with Mr. Clark. Mr. Franklin, you can jump in with respect to this, because there is an issue with respect to the number of letters that have gone out to the individuals on the list that you voted to hire from.
If I may, Mayor, I just want to make sure, if the letters went out to the people on the list, I'm assuming after that point, you're saying that you want to return that list and then get a new list. The work that has been done, you don't want to revoke that work. Is that what I'm understanding? Because you can't, the cat's out of the bag there. If you're saying from this point on, you want to return that list, if that's what you're voting for, okay, then that's something you can put on the table and it can be voted for. But what the work that has been done up to today, okay, I believe can't be revoked.
I don't know, but what I do know is whoever we hire will be on payroll for 2 months with nothing to do. They have 2 months before they start the academy. They're not police officers. So unless we're going to temporarily assign them to DPW to cut grass, I don't know what these fellas are going to do. So that being said, there is a motion, there is a second. Roll call.
Mayor, I just need a little bit of clarity as to what the business administrator just pointed out. So are we calling just to, we're going to leave the letters out there to those who?
The motion is strictly about the list.
Mayor, if we can get
The
clarity.
details,
Return the list, but what is being
and
done
then
with?
call for the new list.
And call for the new list, that is understood,
And
but what
hire
is
off of
being?
the new
Okay.
list.
Hire all of them off the new list?
If we can get
That's what I
if
need
we-
clarity on. That's going to create a
The chief
problem.
is here. Chief, was a promise of employment made to anyone?
I don't think it's a promise of employment, Councilman. I think
So
it's...
we are still within our
we have
legal
the-
right
we have the
to do
chief
that.
answer the question, please?
Go right ahead.
Thank you.
The question is, Chief, have any of the letters gone out to the individuals on the list that was voted on?
What did those letters say?
I'm not quite sure. I wasn't privy to it, so I don't know. So
You know, fellas, there is a motion on the floor. There's a motion made and
There-
seconded.
And we're in discussion, Mayor.
there is, Mayor.
No one has a second.
There is.
Still discussion.
What I think that we just need to be concerned, and what the borough clerk has brought up, is the specificity of the motion, and that is, we can return the list. However, those individuals that have received the letters, and I don't know what the letters say, and Councilman Limbo, you ask a good question. I think that you still have to go through the procedure with respect to those letters that have been issued to those individuals, and that's what I'm saying. I think that if in fact that's the motion, then that's a different story. You can return the list and still go through the process with those individuals that the chief of police have sent letters to. I think that's what you're asking, correct?
But if that's not a promise of employment, then why do we have to adhere to that? Chief, in your opinion, is that a promise of employment? The fact that the letter was sent?
Chief,
So no
Chief,
promise
I have
of
a
employment
question.
has been given.
Chief, what does the letter state?
I would suggest that you look at those letters, because I have seen lawsuits involving the issuance of those letters. They may not offer employment, as you're correct, Mr. Limbo, but I would strongly suggest, to avoid unnecessary litigation, that you look at those letters and then get an understanding of it.
But isn't there an assumption that, if we're concerned about this, we assume that the letters were sent properly, that there's no concerns over the administrative correctness of everything, which is what we're debating now. Right?
I think I think people are just worried that the individuals who received those letters are not going to be able to partake in the opportunity of whatever those letters
What if they
say.
were sent the letters erroneously? I mean, what if we shouldn't have been hiring off that list in the first place? It seems presumptuous to assume that people are offered jobs when we don't quite know if, is that thunder? If we're presuming that they should be assumed jobs.
No, there's not a presumption. I think what Mr. Clark was saying at the hearing is that you are legally obligated to use the existing list in your possession. So the motion, although I have not seen, I don't have the minutes in front of me, but the motion itself was that you were going to hire individuals from that list, not specific individuals. And so based on that vote, the chief of police, and the chief could tell me if I'm wrong, but sent out the letter and is in accordance with the process. So I think that you're not taking away, if it's my understanding correctly, this motion is not to take away whatever opportunity those letters proclaim.
You know, Counselor, 3 weeks ago, you went into a similar dissertation about why we had to wait. Dan said we need a legal opinion. You went into a similar legalese dissertation. This is the gist, the crux of the matter for me. The normal procedure is we call for a hiring list from civil service, we use it, and it's returned in days.
That's not true, Mayor. You're stating a falsehood.
Mary, what you're doing is you're countering it with
I'm countering it with
exceptional,
facts. I'm countering your
exceptional
statement
data.
with facts.
Let me finish, Mary. Then you can go in and say what you want to say. So that's the first thing that's odd about this. Now, we have a responsibility to our residents to be above reproach. The second thing that's odd is on this existing old list, which is no longer, it's antiquated as of July 1st. It vanishes into the air. Is Mary's son and Vicky's brother are on the hiring list, and they're near the top of the list. So it could be interpreted that this was delayed and it's further being obfuscated so that there can be some favoritism in the hiring process. Not saying that there is favoritism, but when you go through points like this, it certainly makes it seem odd and past the norm. And that is where we owe the residents of the borough to do things so that they don't appear to be wrong and to be out of line. By hiring off the new list, which is compiled every several years, I would assume everybody on this existing list is on the new list. They may or may not be in the top 10, but they're certainly on the list. Also, there are no veterans on this existing list that were currently being used. None, zero. On the new list, there are a number of veterans, and they're combat veterans, and they served their country well. I think, Mr. Walczak, when you first applied, you were serving our country in the Marines overseas, and I thank you for your service to our country. That being said, we certainly have an obligation to the people of Sayreville and to the veterans on the list, all of whom are Sayreville residents. That being said, this just is not really coming out well that this is on the straight and narrow. And it's not a good thing for Sayreville. You know, Barbara, how you say Sayreville has a reputation. This doesn't help it. This does not help it. So again, I would ask my colleagues to put aside any family feelings and to do the right thing and to return this list. Actually, we're like 40 down on this list. We've gone through 40 people to where we are. And if we go to the new list, again, everybody on this list that has applied will again be on the new list. I don't know where they will be, but you'll start at number 1, not at number 40. So we have an obligation to the people of Sayreville to do the right thing, and that's what I'm asking my colleagues to do. And I'm asking the attorney not to further obfuscate this issue And I'm going to ask Terry to do a roll call vote, and we'll see where the chips lay.
Well, since we're still in the discussion portion, Mayor, I'm going to correct you that Mike was not here at the last council meeting. He had one of his associates here, so you were incorrect in that again. Secondly, again, we were given an opinion that if we decided that there were vacancies, that we'd have to utilize the list that we have. We've now sent out letters to I don't know how many individuals expressing that there's potential appointment, interviews and background checks and so forth and so on. The ramifications to that are unknown. We've asked now, I just hear from the chief on what those letters exactly say, because I don't know what they say, nor does anyone up here. We want to talk about being above reproach. You going to go against a legal opinion, not having all the information again, and just voting.
And you had 3 weeks to get it. We don't have it. You got to
I have the
move
letter,
forward.
Mayor.
You got to move forward.
Mayor, you got to
Dan.
listen. We asked
No,
the
no,
mayor.
we asked for
the
this
chief.
legal opinion 3 weeks ago.
We had the legal opinion. We were told
No,
what the
no,
legal
no,
opinion
no,
is.
no.
You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it. That's your point. But I just asked the chief for a copy of the letter get sent out to the individuals.
I think it's atrocious what you're doing, and I think it's obvious and transparent.
Mayor, you want to continue to break the rules, that's fine. That's on you. Your planning board doesn't want to abide by regulations for
Dan, I wouldn't be a man
COA?
talking about character and courage since
Okay, Mayor.
since you.
Okay, Mayor, go ahead.
All right.
Let's hear it, Mayor.
Go right ahead,
Go ahead.
Dan. Continue with your
Okay.
statement.
Yep. Yeah, you do what you have to do, Mayor.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Can I say something? You're
Go
talking
ahead.
about character here. What about the character? You are doing this.
There's a motion made and seconded.
Let
and
me
there's a motion on
let me
the
get
floor.
see
We
if I
need
can
to
get
act
this
on it.
vote. So roll call.
Mayor, can I ask one question? 'Cause
Sure. Why not?
I don't understand something. Now, you said there were combat veterans on the new list,
My understanding.
and that everyone on this list is on the new list. How did you know?
They should be.
How did you know
I don't
that?
know what their ranking will be on the new list.
Did you
They're
see
down
that?
in the 40s on the existing list.
Like, do we get to see the new list?
I have not seen it.
Oh, so you don't know that then?
I'm making the assumption based on a number of years' experience, Vicki.
Oh, I'm just asking. I didn't know if we were allowed to see the new list. I know
I have
hadn't
not seen it.
Or the old list.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen the old list.
Okay.
Or the new list.
Okay.
Or 10 years of lists
Okay.
at all.
Is there anything else, Vicki?
No, I just wanted to know that, that's all.
Roll call?
Mayor, I have just one more comment to
Okay.
make. First of all, I have a high regard for veterans. My husband's a veteran. When he was hired here, he used veterans preference. So I understand. Everybody is trying to make this sound like this is something that is against veterans or something that's a unique circumstance. I just pointed out it's not a unique circumstance. I also pointed out that when we did have veterans on a civil service list, we chose, and Mayor, you didn't have any problem with it then, twice, to hire off the Rice list when we had veterans sitting there. Now, I know that that was the best decision for the borough of Sayreville. I know that. And I agree with it, and it is something that is permitted by civil service. So I got that. But this whole 2 months thing, it's 7 weeks between the first day of the academy in Cape May and the date of hiring would be, I guess, somewhere around July 3rd. And then the chief has always told us you need a minimum of 2 weeks in-service training before you're even allowed to go to the academy. So now we're talking about 5 weeks. So I just was going to clarify that's not 2 months, it's 5 weeks that they would be technically hired. But again, it was always said to us a minimum of 2 weeks.
Remember,
So I'm
Mary,
sure.
we're hiring them at this early point in July because the list is expiring, and we couldn't hire them after the list expires.
That's not accurate, Mayor.
Okay.
We were
That's-
asked if there
that's
was
as I know.
vacancies, Mayor.
Okay.
And that was the question that we answered.
Okay, that's, okay, all right. Roll call, Terry.
Councilpersons Buchanan?
No.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
No, for the same reasons I stated at the last meeting when the exact same motion was made.
Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
No.
Novak?
No, and the same reasons. We have a legal opinion, plus we have borough ordinances that I believe if you don't like them, change them.
4-2,
Don't
Mayor.
ignore them.
Okay. I'm sorry. Again, thank you for your service to our
Okay.
country.
I just want to say this is a slap in the face to every vet and every candidate that got a good score on that new list. And you're worried about litigation? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, you hire off that old list, there is going to be litigation. Thank you, Mayor.
Arthur?
Arthur Rittenhouse, 33 Delcat Lane. Let me just make a correction. Mr. DuPont was here at the last meeting, Dan.
Yeah, I
2
think-
meetings ago, he was not here.
Yeah, I think he was referencing this, the meetings too.
And we discussed this both times.
Yeah, when my wife had
And you were
passed.
supposed to check with Mr. Clark. And let me say what Mr. Clark said, Mayor, if I may. I've watched it on tape. Mr. Clark said that if you were to return the list, there was no list available, and he did not know how long it would take to make a new list. That was wrong. He was absolutely wrong. What Mr. Lembo is saying, he was wrong. There is a new list available, and it would take 2 to 3 days. Now, Mr. Clark should have known that as the labor attorney. You were supposed to follow up, and you were supposed to get back to one of our residents who's here tonight with an answer, which you didn't do. Again, showing, and I hate to say it, your incompetence on certain things. When I was on the council, I asked you to resign. I would do that again, because you're not giving a proper legal opinion. Mr. Clark gave specific information that was wrong. The council voted on that wrong information in making their decision, because it sounded like there wasn't any other list around. There wasn't a list available. There was a list available. It came out March 31st. It was available. So you were here, you were supposed to find out from Mr. Clark. You didn't do that. You didn't get back to residents. You know, we're paying you $8,400 a month plus extra money to get these answers, to get back to the public, and you don't do that.
Yeah, Mr.
First of all,
if
I may first. The borough attorney, as you know, being up here, does not, it works for the council. And the correct way is to go through the council to ask the request of Mike, because he's getting paid. If every resident contacted Mike, our bills would be
He was the
astronomical.
one who told her to come up after the meeting, talk to her, and that he would get back, and that's on the public tape, and nobody on the council objected to that. So therefore, you allowed him to do it. Therefore, he is working for the council, and you approved it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Rittenhouse.
you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Being no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, we're going to adjourn this meeting and go right into our workshop meeting and take a motion for adjournment. All in favor? Okay.
Of course. The council doesn't, the council can go by the one that's in their packet. There's no changes in that.
What's that?
There's no changes.
Okay.
They need this, or there's no change?
No, there's no changes.
Everybody here? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for a salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Terry, statement of publication.
Mayor, take note that this agenda session meeting of the Mayor and Borough Council being held on this 12th day of June 2017 has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Buchanan.
Here.
Grillo.
Here.
Kilpatrick.
Here.
Lembo.
Here.
Melendez.
Here.
Novak.
Here.
Okay, under all business, Terry, if you would read it, please.
Mayor, just put that there, note for the record that all COA related ordinances that were adopted on May 22nd, 2017 will be listed for public hearing on June 26, 2017.
Terry, should that read introduced, not adopted?
No.
No, adopted.
Public
We
hearing and
already did
adoption.
introduce.
Okay.
Okay, committee reports, Administration of Finance, Councilwoman Novak.
Yes, I don't have any minutes. Applications received as listed under the 1, 2, and 3, under B, under the,
Okay,
on the agenda.
anything else?
Yes, you notice in one of the ordinances that we read today, we will be getting a bus for the Office on Aging. Although it looks like it's coming out of the bonding ordinance, we did receive a grant for that, and the money was put in. So this is really going to be helpful for the seniors and the handicapped in town. Also, I'd like to say something about Matt Winston. There isn't a person I know that didn't meet Matt that didn't absolutely love him. He was such a wonderful guy, and he went out of his way for you, no matter what your request was, or just to come over and say hello to you and give you a peck on the cheek. He was a really nice guy, and I just feel so sad for his wife and children. The children are going to be missing out on so much not having their dad around. I just wanted to say that. And I'm a little concerned that there was not a bonding ordinance for roads. How come?
Just didn't get completed yet.
Okay.
Didn't get all the I'll have it ready for introduction at the next meeting.
I know,
Sorry
but
about
that's
that.
the end of June,
Okay.
and then we only have one meeting in July.
Yes.
So we're not going to be able to go out for bid for any road projects until August?
I don't know if we're ready to go out for bid yet. On
We
those
have the
projects.
design work done on all the streets for this year, don't we?
We have, the next phase is ready to go to bid, so once we
Yeah.
get the okay, we could bid and time it with the adoption of the ordinance.
Should we call a special meeting then in order to get this done? Because if not, are we going to have roads done?
I just have a question. I don't really know the legal part of this, Wayne, the lawyer. If we had a special meeting next week, could we then adopt 1 week later, or no? We'd have to have 2 weeks in
No,
between?
it's not enough time,
Not on the
no.
bond ordinance. That's what I thought.
So what's the soon, all right, just run me through this timeline here. So we have our next meeting, the end of the month.
Yep.
That's when that will be on there. What's the soonest that we can turn around and come back?
2 weeks after that, so call for a special meeting in July?
We're going to have to, otherwise we're not going to be able to move forward. And one of the biggest complaints that we clearly see and receive up here is roads. I don't understand how we can sit up here as council people saying that we serve this town if we're going to turn around and allow our road ordinances and roads to be done, not until, when would that get done? If we go out to bid, these roads wouldn't get done until when?
This year. They
This
won't get
year.
done this year.
That, we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that. We can't sit up here as council people and say that we represent this town and allow this to happen. So, agreed? So we'd call a special meeting? Can we authorize Terry to do that now? If we're all in agreement of bring this for our next
Well,
council meeting in 2 weeks?
Let's take a look at it and.
What do you mean?
see
It's already been looked at. It's done.
If we don't have first reading until the next meeting,
Wayne, what's a dollar value? It's over,
$3 million.
Million.
But
I'd like
Yeah.
to look at it.
What are you talking about? Look at, we already approved all of
Take a
this.
look at it.
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to ask right now. We had a budget meeting. We appropriate the money. Jay just told us that the phases are done and ready. The only thing that you would be doing by turning around and not allowing us to have a special meeting is stopping the residents that are on that list to get their road done, have it done this year. That's all we would be doing. We're asking to have a meeting 2
Vicki,
weeks.
I don't vote in the event of the tie, so if you guys want to introduce, go ahead and introduce.
Does anybody else disagree?
What are you talking about, Mayor?
You know what, Mayor, I just want the roads done. And clearly, under this time frame, your roads would not get done. I am asking that we turn around and agree to a meeting 2 weeks from next council meeting so we can get this done for the residents.
Or we could do it at the time of introduction. We could call for the special meeting at that time.
I'd rather do it now. Because
2 weeks
Hold on,
after the
perspective, though.
26th is the 10th.
Is 2 weeks going to make that much difference?
I think
And
so. I think
But it's
so.
already a month.
Jay says he can put it out to bid, prior to the final adoption.
I would, I can guarantee you right now, if the people on those streets that are due to have their roads repaired this year were told, we're gonna just wait a little bit longer, I don't think they'd be happy with that. I don't think that they would be happy knowing that we're sitting here fighting over 2 weeks. Why would we delay something when we can move it forward? That's the difference between progress and stagnation.
I wouldn't mind, because it's $3 million, I would advise that you have an ordinance in your hand that you can read and review before you vote on it. If it was a small amount of money, for the sake of expediency, I could understand, but because it's $3 million.
Are you saying these roads don't need to be done?
No, that's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying they need to be done and we need to expedite this process.
What I'm saying is it's $3 million,
Yes.
and
That we've
prudence
already
would
agreed
dictate.
to.
They've already
that,
been.
you
It's
know
been, it was
exactly
part
what
of the
you're gonna-
budget that we voted on
Okay.
in March.
Hey, listen, folks, you have the votes. You can introduce.
Okay, so
But
let's.
Mayor, that's, the introduction is not the problem. The problem is that you changed this schedule. You were the one who said you didn't want 2 meetings in July, you didn't want 2 meetings in August, and you said, don't worry. Don't worry, we can always call for a special meeting if we need it. I'd like to have a special
remember
meeting
that.
2 weeks after the introduction on July 10th. That's all we're asking for.
So,
For
I'm
most
very
normal
proud
councils,
of the
that would
$3
work.
million.
Not for this one.
Let me just, if I may, Mayor, let me just address the residents here and on TV.
Well, wait a minute, it's Mary's report, so why don't we
Oh.
wait till it's your report, and then you,
Well, isn't it discussion on this?
well, her committee report went over to your committee, I guess, so.
Well, it's finance, and I'm number 2 on finance, so wouldn't it be both of our
Go
reports? I
right
guess?
ahead.
Okay.
Fascinating meeting.
I am extremely excited that last year and this year, I fought like hell to have our road improvement budget increased from $2 million to $3 million. And I made this very public each time, that there were years that there was no money appropriated in order to actually improve the roads in this town. One of the biggest complaints that we just had from Mr. Bashada ourselves right here is that our roads are falling apart, they are deteriorating. And right now, we have an opportunity to make sure that roads get paved that were approved. They have moved through the phase process that's needed as per Jay Cornell, our borough engineer. We agreed to this dollar amount in every single budget meeting that we had. And what you're looking at, residents, right now, if we don't call a special meeting, these roads will not get done this year. It's unacceptable for anyone up here to sit there and look at residents in the eye and say, as your council person, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I am going to ask that we hold a special meeting on May 19th, or July 19th, sorry.
No.
June 19th, sorry, I have Monday here, I thought it was May. June 19th, to make sure our residents get their roads fixed. Because if we don't do this, have to wait for the next meeting and then go out to bid after that, your roads won't get done. That is unacceptable. We are here for progress, and that's what needs to happen on roads. The 19th.
What's the meeting for?
No, that can't be right.
No.
What's
it
the
can't be
date?
right.
You pull it up.
Monday's the 19th.
He's,
Not
look
this
at the
We don't
calendar.
have enough time to.
Terry, what is the absolute soonest?
We introduce, 2 weeks after we.
So if we introduce,
July 10th,
so July 10th.
July 10th.
Look it up. I'm going on
Yeah,
his
you got the
calendar.
wrong calendar.
Don't you want to meet July 10th?
I want a meeting as soon as we can after we introduce this, which would be at the next meeting.
What's the
Right.
July
July 10th.
meeting?
So then that would be,
24th.
Or
July
meeting?
10th.
Yeah.
A regular July meeting would have been July 24th.
so we would,
That's your second meeting in July.
You're just reinserting, you're just inserting.
we don't have a second meeting in July, so.
No,
we're
but we
making
would
it.
if we have a special meeting on the 10th.
So,
See,
July
it's not
10th.
just, Jay might have it ready to go out to bid on July 24th, but then we don't have another meeting until August
this-
24th to accept the bids.
It's
So
unacceptable.
we're talking September before we could even do anything.
We can't do
The way the
that.
current schedule is.
We can't do that. It's unacceptable. I don't understand why it's not on here now. What, did we get an answer to that? Why wasn't it on here today?
It was just a mistake.
It was
No
a mistake.
oversight.
So let's rectify the mistake. July 10th.
We'll
Have
introduce.
a-
You want, I work for you. Don't look at
So
me
what
like
do we
I'm
have to do?
holding
And do we have to
things up
sit
here.
here and do a
Make a
roll call? I make a motion that we have a special meeting on July 10th in order to,
motion. Have a public hearing on the ordinance that will be introduced on June 26th.
exactly.
Second.
Sorry that I wasn't speaking into the
Roll
mic.
call?
We need a roll call or just all ayes? I don't need a roll
Any
call on that.
objections? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Anything
all.
else?
No, Mayor,
Oh, time?
progress.
Okay.
Can we have a time on that?
Councilman Lembo.
Can we do
Planning-
council meeting
Mayor,
time, 7
before we
o'clock?
come-
earlier
I need a
rather than
time on
later.
that meeting, please.
Whatever
move it to
good.
6?
6 is fine. With
The
me.
6 is fine, huh?
6?
Everybody available at 6 PM?
Yes.
6 PM, July 10th.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Councilman Lembo?
Thank you, Mayor. Move the following minutes be received and filed. Board of Adjustment minutes of April 26th and the Planning Board minutes of May 17th.
Any
Second.
objection? Next item?
Also to receive and file a notice to adjacent property owners received from Getty Properties Corp. regarding the remediation work for contaminated soil on Lot 55 in Old Bridge. Receive and file.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anything else, Councilman?
That's it, Mayor. Other than that, progress.
Can I ask a
You-
question of Mr. Lembo?
Yes.
I read the planning board minutes. Am I right in what I was reading, that there was discussion on yet another property that could potentially have housing on it over on Route 35? By
Yes.
the Deco Lounge?
Yes, there was an informal proposal made for 44 townhomes
Whoa.
and 12 COA apartments.
Now, that's not currently included in the COA plan that we have before us.
No.
So was it discussed about how this, if we bring in this other planner, would be able to possibly include that into the COA
Well,
agreement?
Certainly, those 12 units could certainly fall into it, sure.
And this is why, again, I really truly support the idea of bringing in that other planner, whomever that may be. In this case, we've already voted on it. Because in the last couple of weeks, we have 2 additional sites that are going to have potentially a large amount of housing units on there. From the Mako property to now what I read in the planning board minutes, the Deco Lounge property, which currently, if I read it correctly, is not zoned residential. Is that correct, Mr. Lembo?
Excuse me, it's not, it's vacant.
But it's not zone, it's got to be zoned something.
No, it's not zoned residential. That would require a change of zoning.
So this would be another instance so that residents understand. One of the major reasons why I had a massive problems with this COA plan is because as a council person, while I agreed to the number of units that we needed to fulfill, and I thought that the 700 plus was a fair number based on the negotiations done by our attorneys, what I did not agree with and what I did not know about until it was presented in front of me was that certain sites needed to have rezoning changes and density changes. And here you have another situation where yet there's another parcel of land that would have to be rezoned, potentially additional homes put on there. In addition to now what the Mako litigation has yielded, and as a teacher, as a resident, and as I've said to many people, and many people agree with me, the school districts can't handle it, especially in that particular area, because the Eisenhower School is bursting at the seams and cannot handle one more child. And you look right across the street from it, and there's still additional building going on over there as well. And this is why I have said constantly that the plan that was put before us right now with COA is absolutely unacceptable when now you have these additional sites that potentially could be built on, will come before us, and our hands will be tied. As we were told by our attorneys, our hands are tied with Kaplan because he has signed on as an intervener. I will It was asked before. What has anybody done? Mr. Grillo asked that. What recommendations have been made? Well, I'll tell you, the very first meeting when this whole thing blew up in our faces, and I sat in that room on a phone call with, well, Mr. Lembo, you were present at that meeting. Myself, Danny Buchanan, I think, if I remember correctly, Dan Frankel, Larry Sachs, and Leon Cavella. And I found out some really interesting things. One of the first things that I said was, did anybody take a look at the map from the Melrose piece of property that is put in the COA? It was the blurriest thing. I had to wear my father's glasses and put my mother's on top of it because the way that that was drawn up, you couldn't see exactly what they were proposing over there. And do you remember, Mr. Lembo, what we determined, what I was able to find out when I looked at that? All of those units in the Melrose section that was looking to be redeveloped as part of that COA property were all going to be 3-bedroom units. You remember that? That's what the original plan was. And had we adopted it the way that it was, that is what was going to go over there. When the first thing I said, this is unacceptable. And one of the attorneys said, well, I think we can change that. I think we can change that. And lo and behold, boom, that changed. And I remember asking specifically who put this plan together because I hadn't seen it. I wasn't a part of the conversation. And it took a little dancing by the attorney, but about 10 times the attorney said, I said, who signed off on this to bring it forward to us and to sit there and tell us we are now locked to this? And the attorney said, well, the borough did. I said, excuse me, the borough's not human. Define for me who the physical entity was that actually sat down with the attorneys and with the planners and with the developers to map out and determine how many market rate and how many affordable housing units. He says, well, the borough did. I just told you. And I got really indignant and I got nasty. And I said, I want to know who. Tell me what human being sat down. And he said, the council. I said, I'm going to stop you right now because I'm the council and I know I didn't sit down. I asked Mr. Buchanan, I asked Mr. Lembo, and I asked, who else was there? That might have been it. None of them had ever sat down or spoken with a developer. So I said one more time, I want to know who signed off on this and sat down and spoke with the developers. And this was an interesting thing. And finally, the attorney said it. The mayor signed off on it. The mayor did this. So ladies and gentlemen, now Mr. Lembo, you were there in that meeting. This went on. Danny, you were there. And I know the attorneys heard it because it took that long to get them to say it. And I am sorry, but this is an unacceptable plan the way that it's written. I pray for the Saraville residents and for this town that we can come up with something better because this is a nightmare. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. So now you have yet another piece of property, ladies and gentlemen, that is potentially going to be changed zoning and have residential components added to it right over there in one of the most congested school areas. So I just wanted to make sure now, because we have to make sure transparency happens all the time, and I wanted to make sure that I read those minutes correct, and I wanted to make sure that the people at home that didn't get those minutes understood that these are the things and the discussions that go on in these meetings. Thank you. Thank you for answering my questions, Mr. Lembo.
Okay, Pat, are you done? So we'll go now to public safety. Councilman Grillo.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I have no minutes or departmental reports. I do have a notice of retirement received from Police Detective Joseph Walski, effective June 30th, 2017. We thank him for his 34 years of service. Just need to receive and file.
Anything else?
Yes, a couple of things. Well, first off, I'd like to read, now therefore be it resolved by the Borough Council, the Borough of Saraville, that it does approve hereby of the proposed housing element and fair share plan presented at its June 13th, 2016 council meeting, and further approves and endorses the proposed housing element and fair share plan dated May 28th, 2016, revised June 10th, 2016. This is dated June 13th, 2016, and I'll read off the votes. Buchanan, yes. Grillo, yes. Kilpatrick, yes. Lembo, yes. Novak, yes. Rittenhouse, yes. So 6 people voted unanimously to advance the housing element and fair share plan. I just want to put it on the record, because we've had a debate tonight as to whether these people were present, whether they were aware. They were. They voted on it. They voted to endorse it, and they voted to advance it.
And I'd just like to say again, yes, because what we were told at the closed session meeting, what that entailed. We were, and it's a matter of record, what we agreed to in closed session, we came out and said, we agreed to the plan that we heard in there. We never saw the plan.
You shouldn't have voted on something you didn't see or didn't know about, Mary.
I voted on what I was told by our attorneys. And since you didn't say that there was anything different, and Kennedy didn't say it is anything different,
I've
you're
asked
both
you-
members of the planning board.
Let's go at it. I've asked you before, how did you expect to build 700 units without rezoning or upzoning or changing density? Or you just didn't understand it?
We were told that on this particular property, there would be 50 units of low-income housing. Over here, there were that 700, as you recall, a lot of them have already been built, 200 with a point, I understood that exactly. Highview homes have already been built. We got credits for Kulas and Swider. So we weren't building 758 houses. That's really, a lot of them we've already been built or we have credits for. All we were told was Kaplan's property, we're going to build 22 here, and on Kaplan 2, we're going to build, I don't have the numbers in front of me. That is all we were told. And we were told if they never get built, if the developer never comes in and builds it, oh, well, we tried. That's what the lawyers told us. That's what we came out and voted on. What we were told, and maybe we should never have closed session anymore. Maybe it should all be done out here and open.
Well, Resolution 2016-197 was voted on unanimously. I'll leave it at that.
And it has nothing in there that states any of the things that we're now expected. Now we're expected to change all of these zoning ordinances that we were never told we were going to have to do. You might be fine with it, Steve. You're from Staten Island. You're the planner over there. We don't want a concrete jungle here.
Mary, you're from Queens.
I haven't been in Queens since 1958.
Listen, I'll just...
No. In Staten Island, we actually have over $2 billion worth of capital investment. We had Barbara Cook-Cummins come up here and say she can't even buy pantyhose in town. I think my record in Staten Island is pretty good, so I wouldn't worry about a concrete jungle, Mary. But I have the floor, correct? So I want to introduce a motion related to COA. This is on the recommendation of the special master. We need to authorize the planning board to conduct 2 studies. One is a potential zoning change to encourage mixed-use development on Route 35 in Morgan, to potentially take vacant sites and convert them and encourage development. The other would be an adaptive reuse plan for underused and historic buildings in town, to study what building stock we have, what can be converted and what can't, so that we have a plan for the potential reuse of vacant buildings. So I'd like to make that motion to empower the planning board to conduct that study.
Now, Steve, you mentioned that before. Hold on, is that in our packet again?
It is not.
Oh.
Because we have to have a resolution.
There's a motion made. Is there a second?
Wait a minute.
It has to be on the next, excuse me.
No, I would want to.
It'll be on the next
I would like the attorney to prepare it.
Just put a not to exceed number on it, Steve.
Well, this has to go to the planning board. I'm not sure.
Well,
I'm not sure how they would approach it, but I think they have to have a discussion on it, and what the borough planner would discuss.
Is there
I think
any
they should have a meeting and
objection to
discuss
this
these.
being forwarded to the planning board?
Yes, that's my request, for a resolution to be prepared to forward those 2 requests.
Any objection to this?
The resolution will be on the next meeting.
Fine with me.
Okay.
Makes sense, Route 35
That sounds good.
desperately needs something.
Anything else, Steve?
That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Public Works, Councilwoman Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see, Public Works, I have no minutes or departmental reports, no committee reports at this time, and I do have 2 things to state. Number 1, Clean Communities Grant. Again, this was notification through Elise Barone and her hard work. Saraville, for the Clean Communities Grant, has now received $75,000, which is fabulous. Hats off to Elise and all her hard work. It's just, yet again, if you look back over the last several council meetings, I can't even sum up how much money now we have been able to obtain through our tonnage grants and our clean community grants and so forth. So this time, $75,000 Second, also to report, the road department held a cleanup on Saturday, June 10th. 8 people from the Sheriff's Labor Assistance Program was able to collect 38 bags of litter along the Ernston and Cheesequake Road. So you may have seen them. They may have stopped a little traffic or slowed it down a little bit because they were there working quite a number of hours to make sure that they get all that debris up for us, and I thank them for organizing that. I'm not going to, I just want to say that Mary's sentiments in reference to Matt Winston, he was a friend of mine, and his kids went to school with my daughters, and I would see him all the time in front of Wilson School, picking them up when he could. I was happy to hear the last time I talked to him, he was able to take some time to spend a few days with them. He didn't know he was sick. Sometimes God works in mysterious ways, so that way he was able to have those days before this situation happened. My heart breaks and goes out to his entire family. He was a good man. And other than that, progress.
Thank you. Recreation, Councilman Melendez.
Item A, I have no departmental minutes or reports. Item B, application for special event received from South Amboy Sierra Rotary Society to hold a color run, Kennedy Park, September 9, 2017, rain date 9/10/2017. All reports received, there were no objections or issues noted.
Any objection? Next item, Councilman.
No, just my condolences to the Winston family with that progress.
Thank you. Water and Sewer Environmental Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I would like to congratulate the Cerebral Soccer travel team, the U9 EDP Division champions. They went undefeated this year. It's the first time, my understanding, that a team went undefeated in this division through Cerebral. I'm asking this council that if we could recognize them, just to congratulate them. This is a first. It's a great thing for Cerebral to, in the recreation program, to have this accomplishment. So I'm asking if we could have them come to the next meeting and just say congratulations to them. They're 9-year-olds and under. So.
Any objection? Next item.
Okay, I'll get that information over to Terry. Number 2, received a report request from regarding our water department vehicles. I'd like to get information on how we can get plows on the vehicles that don't have the plows. My understanding is that sometimes over the winters, the vehicles try to get to their stops in case of an emergency, and they can't get there because they don't have plows. They have to wait for Public Works. So I'm asking if we can look at, with Wayne, Dan, to get plows on the vehicles that don't have plows, plus make sure that we have them on the new vehicles coming forth.
Danny, I think we approved that in our budget.
Yes.
That should already be being done. Is that being done yet, Mr. Frankel or Wayne?
It has not come up to us for ordering. We'll get the Public Works Department to have them ordered so we get the plows on the vehicles.
I believe it was 11 total. 9 and then 2.
9 and then 2. 9 plus 2.
Okay.
Next, while we're speaking of Public Works, and I guess police, a few months ago, I was approached regarding putting a couple of crosswalks down South Pine Avenue. There's residents that live on the western side, trying to get over to baseball fields or to the stores on the eastern side, and it's a 40-mile-an-hour zone there, and they're basically dodging traffic to get across the street. The problem that we have is a lot of the corners don't meet up, and I don't know the ins and out on exactly what the requirements are if you can have opposite corners meet up for for crosswalks. But I don't know if we can have Jay work with public safety on coming up with a design for where we could just put a couple of them so that people from the western side of Morgan get over to the eastern side when they need to get over there.
It's a good idea.
Also, I've been getting a couple emails regarding Bordentown Avenue, and there's a house that's looking to open up ground for sewer and water near the S-curves. There's a new house being built.
They took down the old one. Yeah.
I think that house is in Old Bridge.
It is, and they're looking to open up the road in Cerebral, right? Well, it's actually the county road.
It's a county road.
In
Actually,
Cerebral.
if I might, let me just, the house is in Saraville.
Oh.
The business is in Old Bridge. I think that the house in Saraville, there weren't any issues about water and sewer. The business that's in Old Bridge, there were some requests for borough water and sewer service, and I think that's still being reviewed.
Now, how does that go about, since the county, a year or two ago, redid that entire stretch of road, and it's been phenomenal over there, and now they're gonna break into it again.
Well, if they want to open the S-Bend, that's a county road, so they would have to get a permit from the county. It's
Okay.
not a borough road.
All right, and has there been any movement on Ernst and Bordentown intersection? I know the county said they were gonna do it.
The borough did what they needed to do. The county was going to adopt a consenting resolution. I'm not sure if that happened yet. What they told us was after that resolution was adopted at the county level, then they could go through and do the work. So I guess we could check with the county to see if they've adopted that resolution yet.
Can you check
Excellent,
what?
because again, I'm sure everyone has seen it. It's still backed up to Washington Road.
I almost had a head-on collision, literally this weekend with my kids in the car. A car was riding the turn lane, and came right at me. And then stood there and then, gave, I'll use Mr. Bashada, the half a peace sign at me. I'm in the right of way. It was scary. I mean, this woman was, like an inch away from my bumper. It was frightening.
May I ask a question, Jay? Have we handled the problems with Jersey Central with the White Oaks light? I know that there was some problems with turning it on, but there were Jersey Central problems?
My understanding is they have not done what they were supposed to do. I think the weather has pushed back their schedule. I believe it was supposed to happen this week is the last I heard. The paving issue is actually, that's a different issue.
Right.
But that was pushed back till after July 4th because of the weather.
Yeah.
But the Jersey Central issue, my understanding is still not resolved, but it's supposed to happen this week.
Yeah, I knew about the roadway. I mean, a lot of people in White Oaks are saying, you stopped and the rest of the road is so bad. So I told them that would be finished further down. But I was wondering about the light, how far we were with Jersey Central. So if it isn't done this week, I'll bug Dan, who will bug Jerry, right? Okay.
Anything else, Council President?
That'll be all.
Thank you. Okay, under my report, I have a request from the chief that on the emergency management, there be co-deputy coordinators. One is Captain Daniel Plumacher, and the other is Police Auxiliary Captain Chris Bardsley. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Councilperson Buchanan?
Yes.
Grillo?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Lembo?
Yes.
Melendez?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
All right, with that, we'll go to the Business Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I need authorization to execute the fiscal year 2018 Municipal Alliance Agreement and the acceptance of the funds in the amount of $42,655.
Next item?
I need authorization to renew the 2006 Cooperative Agreement Home Consortium Program for federal fiscal years 2018 and 2020 with automatic renewals for 3 successive years.
Any objections? Next item?
I need, well, it's information purposes, our commercial utility consultant, CUC, will participate in an online reverse auction for the purposes of purchasing electricity from third-party suppliers for use in the borough of Sayreville. When they conduct that auction, as they did last time, action may be taken on June 26, 2017.
Thank you. Next item?
Authorization to adopt an ordinance for the formation of a stop intersection at Whitehead Avenue and Rose Street as outlined in Sergeant Barlinski's report and the recommendation from Police Chief Zabrowski.
Any objections? Next item?
Authorization to purchase 2 2018 Chevy Tahoe police pursuit vehicles from Wall Chevrolet of Cherry Hill, New Jersey, through the Cranford Police Cooperative Purchasing System 47 Contract 16-01 in the amount not to exceed $78,846.
Any objection?
Authorization to purchase 7 2017 Police Interceptor utility vehicles from Winter Ford of Cherry Hill through the state contract T276 A88-728 in the amount not to exceed $184,548.
Any objection? Next item?
Authorization to purchase emergency lighting and equipment on new police vehicles from East Coast Emergency Lighting of Millstone, New Jersey through state contract in an amount not to exceed $97,401.01.
Next item?
Authorization to purchase 10 WatchGuard in-vehicle cameras from Advanced Electronic Design of North Attleboro, Massachusetts through state contract for an amount not to exceed $55,860.
Any objections?
Authorization to renew CAD system software maintenance agreement with Q's Enforce Development, QED, of Stoneham, Massachusetts through state contract in an amount not to exceed $25,026.
Any objections?
Authorization for USA Architects to perform an assessment of firehouses in an amount not to exceed $28,800.
Any objections?
Authorization to appoint/promote Fred Westuba to Senior Maintenance Repairer in the Department of Public Works effective June 27th, 2017.
Any objections?
Authorization to advertise for the receipt of bids of brine making system with 4 hook lift mountable brine applicators.
Next item.
Authorization to advertise for the receipt of bids for routine and emergency repairs to water, sewer, and public works infrastructure.
Next item.
Authorization to purchase 2 2017 Ford pickup trucks from Buyer Ford of Morristown, New Jersey through state contract in an amount not to exceed $56,066. The total cost deducts the value of one trade-in vehicle, Ford 2008 F-350 of $2,000.
Next item.
Authorization to purchase 1 truckload of automated refuse containers from IPL Environmental of St. Damien, Canada through the HGASO Bi-Cooperative Purchasing Program for an amount not to exceed $27,606.
Next item.
Authorization to appoint/promote Joshua Mishevitz to the classification of meter worker 1 effective July 26, 2016, as per civil service promotional procedures.
Next item.
Authorization to appoint/promote Stephen Noonan to the classification of meter worker 1 effective July 28, 2016, as per civil service promotional procedures.
Next item.
Authorization to create the position of water and sewer utility superintendent.
Next item. Oh, that's
What
it.
is that?
Anything else, Dan?
That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Wayne, CFO's report?
Yes, received information about an individual, I didn't believe it's a contractor, that's interested in purchasing a portion of the Duhernal property that is located in Monroe Township. It's on the, I think you should have received drawings of the property or tax maps of the property with it highlighted. It's on the outskirts.
What's the recommendation
And
of
the engineer, CME's office, Dave and Jay, say that it's not needed for the operation of Duhernal. A good portion of it is wetlands.
How many acres,
And there's
Jay?
some buildable lots on it.
There's approximately 36 acres total. 12 acres is developable. The other 24 has wetlands and other constraints.
It would be the recommendation that all of it be purchased, be sold as one parcel, and whatever the purchaser does with it with Monroe Township is their business, okay? If the council so...
Not contingent
if the
upon
council-
approvals.
Right, if the council is so inclined to do it, you can have the attorney take whatever steps are necessary. I believe there needs an ordinance or something to do that in order to sell property.
Well, I thought we had to get 3 appraisals.
It's a public land sale. I defer to the attorney. I think you need an appraisal to give an idea what the initial bid might be.
Right.
Right. I thought we took 3 appraisals. Let's get it appraised and see what it...
Okay.
Any objection to getting it appraised?
Okay, so...
Steve?
Go with it.
Okay. Next item, Wayne?
And the next item is...
No, we're just looking to see what it's worth.
Yeah, got that.
We're not putting it up for sale yet.
Right. But that would be the first step.
Yeah.
The next item is the amendments to the 2017 budget for the grants that are listed, the 5 grants that have been received since the budget was adopted. There'll be resolutions prepared for those.
Okay. Anything else, Wayne?
That's it.
Thank you. Borough Engineers, Jay Cornell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item. We received bids for the replacement of the cooling tower at the Public Safety Complex. There's a protest that's been filed by the second bidder against the low bidder, so we're currently working through that with the borough attorney. We hope to have that resolved and make a recommendation for award at your next meeting. And that would be
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Borough Attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Anything for executive session?
No, sir.
Public portion, for any and all. Ken?
Just want to point out that I'm delighted to hear some of the discussion by the governing body on this color and the status of it at the present time. The comments from Councilwoman Kilpatrick and I thought Councilwoman Novak summarized the situation which I have been talking about for the last 3 or 4 meetings. That where we're at right now and we're trying to escape is this COLA solution being a builder's paradise. I think that's where it's at. We're in the 11th hour. I am delighted that we hired a planner, whether it be Susan Gruhl. I don't know her qualifications, but I've heard they're pretty good. Even Councilman Grillo said they're pretty good. The mayor came up with something that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago that I had recommended planners. I don't know anything about planners. I've never been involved with planners. I don't know Yacovello unless you want to say, seeing him at a cocktail party and saying, hello, how are you? I don't know Susan Gruhl or her qualifications. The mayor is right in the sense that I've had discussions with many people over the years on my experience with professionals. I outlined one here a few weeks ago. But, you know, so the mayor comes up with, when he gets backed in the corner, he says some things that are a little out in left field. But the real issue that I've brought up before, and I'll say it again, it's the mayor's planning board, and Mayor, I'm not going anywhere else because these people here have been elected by the residents of the town. You've been sitting on an illegal planning board, an illegal planning board. You've never given the taxpayers the courtesy of telling them why you chose to sit on an illegal planning board. So I'm not going to an illegal planning board. I'll be here all the time until we get this COA thing straightened out. And I'm delighted that at least some people here are trying to do the right thing for the taxpayer of Sherrill. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Art?
Arthur Nass, 33 Delicate Lane. Just have a question.
Art, I don't think that mic is on.
Maybe it died.
It had a long night.
Thank you. Art Rittenhouse, 33 Delicate Lane. Just have a question. Under the Water and Sewer Department, Mayor, it says authorization to create a position of Water and Sewer Utility Superintendent. Don't we have a person who's in charge of water and sewer?
Dan?
Mayor, this position is a position that will oversee both the water treatment and Duhernal. That is a civil service position title only. That was the closest title by civil service that would fit the needs of somebody who would be supervising in the water treatment and in Duhernal.
Doesn't our water director, isn't he capable of doing that?
It's not a matter of capability, it's a matter of overseeing. We need someone with 16 employees to oversee the water treatment and Duhernal, and we are promoting someone at the water treatment to do that.
Okay, while I'm on that, have we any more status on the the water department head getting his certification?
He is going for a refresher course, and I have asked him to also possibly do one more possible special tutoring. I'll get an answer I asked him that probably 2 weeks ago. I will get back to you with an answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Are there any other questions or comments? Jim?
Thank you very much, Mayor. You want me to use the other microphone?
Is that working?
This one works, yeah.
Okay.
I too want to thank the council for hiring the planner, or those members of the council who did vote to hire the planner. I want to thank Councilman Grillo for the suggestion about adaptive reuse. That was something that I had suggested quite a while ago with that list of other things, and I think it would be a good idea for the
And you deserve
the
full credit on
planning
that,
board
Jim.
to consider that, and I hope you would move forward with that. But I don't want to. I don't know if it serves any purpose right now to assess blame for how we got into this situation. But we have a situation, and there are a couple things, and they all have to do with land use. The Fulton Landing suit probably never should have gone on that long. Certainly shouldn't have cost $1.3 million, and I don't know if those are all the bills. And Wayne, I don't know if those are just the legal bills or all the bills, because I know there were other professionals. I know that there was the Peter Steck bill probably in there somewhere, maybe planning bills. I don't know. But you know what? When you get up to $1.3 million, if it's $50 or $60 or $70,000 more, it really doesn't matter that much. But that's a pretty big issue. The other issue that is a pretty big issue that will, if not handled right, and we are at the 11th hour, it will change the complexion of the town forever. It will mean more kids in our schools. It will mean more traffic on our roads. It will mean more taxes than that each and every one of us are paying us. Just those two things are very, very important issues, and there are others that I'm not going to go into. But I've been coming to these meetings since I heard about this, and I listen to people get up and speak. They're sincere, they're concerned, they're dedicated, they care about their town. If they knew about these issues when these things first surfaced, these people would be thinking about these and speaking about these. We wouldn't be doing what we are doing at the 11th hour. Now, Councilman, you read that resolution 197. You did a nice job reading that. And that was, you sponsored that resolution, right? Because you were the liaison to the planning board. Obviously, there were unanswered questions about that, or there was not a thorough understanding of that. The council doesn't understand that completely. It's pretty obvious to me the planning board didn't understand what they were doing. At least I hope they didn't.
Did you tell Dr. Mishevitz when you tell him that when
I
you were
certainly
standing
did.
there?
I certainly
You
did. And in fact, Mayor, when I
shared
told
that
him
with
that,
him?
he said to me he was directed by you to do that. That's what Dr. Mishevitz said, and
Let's
we
have
did
Doc
have that
tell me
discussion
that.
outside. And he
Let's
told
have
me,
Doc
don't blame
tell
me.
me that.
This is the mayor's plan.
Ah,
And
boy, is that a familiar ring to it.
so, and this is the public portion, and I'm trying to be constructive here, Mayor. Okay?
Well, that's a
So my
change.
point here is this. When you have something, I actually now have 2 points. When you have something as important as the litigation over the Mako property, or as important as the affordable housing situation, I know that you are entitled to discuss that in Section 8. The resolution that you read says, whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Law says the public may be excluded. They may be excluded. But the law doesn't say you can't talk about that. The law doesn't say you can't come out of that session and talk about what you discussed. Obviously, you're not going to discuss legal strategy publicly. But you should let the people in the town who are paying the bills, who are sitting in the traffic, know that these issues are here and are being discussed. And it's too late now to say that the planning board should have done that. I don't think you lived in town, Councilman, when years ago the planning board would issue press releases on things like this so that the public knew. Years ago, the planning board would take a bus tour every year, and we would go out and look at various parcels, and we would have the planner and the engineer and the attorney explain what could possibly be built there, what they're hearing, who owns it, what the potential was, whether or not we had to react to it, so that we were proactive. those were public meetings, even though they were on buses, they were public meetings, and we invited the press and we invited the residents. Mrs. Kilcummins accompanied us on some of those. And we did that so that the public knew what was going on. And Councilman Lembo, you now sit on the planning board. I would urge you, since what the planning board does is so important, that you not keep these things secret. Councilman Grillo, at the last meeting, I think you said all of these discussions were in closed session. And certainly you're entitled to do that. Certainly when you're discussing legal strategy, you do that privately. But then you come out and say, this is the issue. This is the problem. This is the case. This is the history. This is what we're going to be required to do. There's no violation there of strategy. And in fact, that would be doing the public a service. And if the people knew about this 2 years ago or 3 years ago, certainly if I knew about it, you can be damn sure I would have been here. And we wouldn't be suggesting that we hire an additional planner 2 weeks before we're due back in court after all this time passed. So I know some of you are better at this than others. I know when you do something that you're proud of, that you want the people to know about, you post it on Facebook, you issue a release, you go and talk to people about it. When there is something as important as this, and I'm going to say to you that I don't think there are two more important issues than this suit, only it's important because it cost the $1.3 million and still running, and the affordable housing. I know you don't like me talking about this, Mayor. If you want to
Jimmy, you talk whatever you want, but you need to wrap it up.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I will wrap it up. And the other thing I want to say is this. Since I've been coming to these meetings, I've run into a lot of folks, strangers, people that I don't know, who have come to me and expressed opinions and thanked me for some comments. And one thing they asked is, did I find it disconcerting to come here and be treated the way members of the public are sometimes treated when they're making suggestions, when they're trying to be helpful? And I want to tell you, I think it probably puts a damper on people making public comment when they come up here, especially if they're not elected officials, or they're not being paid, and they give up their nights to come here, and they do not just come here, but to do research and think about this and try and come up with better solutions than people who are appointed to boards come up with. And they're treated disrespectfully, or accusations are made. That's not a good way to get people to express their comments, to try and offer suggestions that are helpful. And all I'm trying to do here with these comments is try and give you an idea. I'm sorry, Mayor?
Anything else? You need to conclude.
No, that's it. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any other questions? Yes, dear, come on up. That's okay.
Ruth Ann Mahoney, 2 Gerard Place, Parlin. I'm here because, once again, about the housing. And my concern is, now we hear there's going to be more housing. Where are all these people going to go to school? I don't understand. The schools are full now. The high school did not have a good article in the weekly paper, so it's not going to encourage people to come to Sayreville to go to school. It will raise the taxes, which I guess the planning board doesn't concern themselves with the school taxes because they're separate from the borough taxes. And also, when I did go to one planning board meeting, and there was one gentleman concerned about a person who wanted to make a 4-bedroom house, and he said, no, you can make it 3 bedrooms because we're concerned about children, how many children there'll be. Well, excuse me, what about all these places? They're going to have children. And I don't know where you're going to put them. Overburdened classrooms, overburdened teachers. It's a sad statement for Sayreville. As far as people wanting to come to the community for a good education. And I think you all know, and I do, that people move to communities for better schools. And that's not what I see happening here. And I do have family member in education here. And my husband was an educator, and my mother. So I know it's not the planning board or the council's concern so much about the education, but it is the people of the town. I'm a teacher in the town. And you know, the taxes will go up. We just tried to sell a house in Spotswood where the taxes are tremendous. Nobody wanted to buy it because of that. And it's school taxes. So it's just a consideration when you're wanting to build more housing. And I go to a planning board meeting and one person can't build what he wants because they're worried about another child or two. And now we're talking about thousands. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Being no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Take a motion for adjournment. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Good night, everyone.